Check 1, 2. Check, check. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Yeah, got it now. Check, check, check.
All right, I'll leave it in. Hot mic.
We won't, hot mic. Hot mic. That's a hot mic. It's on.
Okay. When does that ever
Live.
stop me?
Exactly, I know. As long as your eyes wide open, that's fine.
Green means on.
The green
Okay, got
is
it.
on. Red stop,
you.
green go. For those of you watching online.
Sorry.
I'm good.
Good morning. How are you?
The only issue I have today is, I'm supposed to be at the city club. So I hope we can.
We got a couple heavy ones.
Okay. I
Okay.
can be late. If I'm late, I'm late. It's the mayor's time, so to have a conversation.
Maybe it's the.
Ooh,
It's not.
It is what it is.
ooh, they actually have visitors.
Do you want me to take a minute?
Yeah.
Those are from the last meeting. Okay.
Yeah, I know, it's just, it's like,
Sometimes I like to work. I prefer it on paper.
yeah.
Yeah.
Since life's usually down here, but I did.
He told me on Tuesday he might not be here till 9:45 for budget hearing. Is he
He's
coming
actually
back?
coming today, but he has a kid issue, so he's coming a little later.
Oh, yeah.
So
So not budget.
he's not going to budget. He's coming.
Okay.
He texted me this morning. Maybe she ran a stray cat. This.
I see Marika online. I see Diane, Marika.
Thanks.
Hi there.
Hi. So I see Marika. Hi, Marika. I see Diane Downing is on as well. I know Erica, maybe also is Erica on?
Lillian, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You're on the phone?
Yes, I'll be on my computer in about 5 minutes.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
You're
We have
welcome.
3 and 3, so we have 6. We have a quorum. You want to go ahead?
Let's do it.
Okay. A minute. From
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Friday, February 17th Planning Commission. I'm going to go ahead and read the preamble and then turn it back up to the chair. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law and section 101.021 of the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Abstentions from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to the taking of any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you use the raise hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raise hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile version and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you, and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking on the raise hand icon again and mute your microphone. We will also be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located on the bottom of the WebEx screen. Call-in users can unmute by using *6. All meeting activity is being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter via our website and email have been considered. We've also received emails from those who have provided written comment on a particular matter. Thank you.
Michael, can you call the roll?
Anthony,
Present.
Downing,
Present.
Fluker,
Present.
Curry,
Present.
McCray Scott,
President?
Shiori Clark,
Present.
Slight. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Thank you. First order of business is to approve the minutes from the last meeting. We have a hard copy here that we've reviewed as well.
I move to accept as presented.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other items from the members online? If not, we can call the vote.
Anthony,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Booker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott.
Yes.
Shiori Clark.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. So as we'll get into the agenda today, welcome everyone, both online and here in person. We have a few people here today. First item is lot split and consolidation. This is permanent parcel number 004-21-009. This is at 1029 Starkweather Avenue. Is Michael Wellman here? You are Michael.
Yes.
Welcome, Michael. And are you going to present, I see two matters together or separately? We will have to vote separately, but
Yeah,
just
he's
curious.
just presenting the first one, actually. We had some conversations earlier with Matt Moss, and I think we need to have an
Table.
easement put in place for the second.
Okay,
So we'll
So-
table the second one, we're just gonna talk about the.
okay, good. We'll still take action to table it. You can come back when you're ready, but we'll start with the first one. Thank you. Go ahead.
The desire is just to divide this lot in half with a front portion and a rear portion. There is currently an existing easement in place. Because it's already a shared driveway between the two houses in front, there's already an easement in place for that, a shared easement for a drive between the two buildings. So we do have access to that rear lot already.
Is there a plan
Here it
for,
is.
that is there a plan for renovation or selling or what's the
I
reason for
think the
the
intent
split?
is.
My name is, the property owned by Merchant Area Living Partnership, and my name is Dave Burkowski, and I'm the owner of that. And that is, the goal is to renovate the front house, and then with that back cottage, there's a small cottage, there's a blue existing structure. We want to make sure we could get the lot split, but then the ultimate goal is to design the new construction, take down that structure and design a new construction there. And then the ultimate goal is to sell both the front house as well as the back house.
But to renovate both and.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Commission members, any questions?
I move for approval.
Second, Fluker.
Motion and a second. For the commission members online, it will be helpful if you raise your hand on any item, either to comment or ask questions, just so I can see then that there are questions online. But I don't see any, so let's call the roll.
Anthony,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Booker,
Yes.
Curry.
Yes.
McCray Scott.
Yes.
Shiori Clark.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I'd like this.
I have a question. I'll just introduce myself. I'm Shane. I'm from the survey department. I facilitate a lot of these splits that go to planning and other issues. with building. So this will need to be looked over by planning which one right now and building mainly for their issues with like they'll want to see a utility easement, where you're hooking up your water and your sewer through there. But the only question I have planning wise as right now is that access easement, is that an easement of record?
Yes, it is. It's a recorded easement, not the proposed easement, but the access easement is a recorded easement.
Okay. And then, okay, we'll just keep it in the plan based. Okay.
And
So you-
the proposed easement, the reason it's proposed is that it's for both lots have to sign it and it's like the chicken or anything, you can't file that easement until the lot is split.
I have a question. You work for the city?
Yes,
Okay. Yeah, okay.
usually city reviews, lots and surveys does a review beforehand, so
Yeah.
maybe we can take it off
Yeah.
the line.
For the most part of the commission, our hope was that you've removed,
Yeah.
that we're not reviewing them here. They were being reviewed between you and planning offline, not here at the commission, but thank you for your questions. And for the record, which is why the second one is postponed, when there is a lot that requires access, we require that it's recorded.
Okay.
And that is a requirement that we have. That also includes things like who's in charge of snow removal, those sorts of things. And that's been a practice we have had for many years. Sometimes we will approve something conditionally and the director will not sign off on it until it's actually recorded. So we're enraged, but we make sure that that happens because we know that there'll be unhappy neighbors down the line eventually if we
Okay.
don't. So thank you. So that we had a motion second full vote. This one has passed. On the next item, which is 004-13-0117, which is at 2504 West 10th. I need a motion to table by someone.
Madam Chair, I move to table, address 2504 West 10th Street, lot split and consolidation.
And I second.
Motion and a second. Let's call the roll.
Anthony,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott,
Yes.
Shiori Clark.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. And thank you.
Thank you
And it's
very
good to
much.
see you. I don't know if you
Likewise.
remember
It's
me.
been- oh,
It's
yeah.
been like 20 years since.
Yeah, that's been a long time, hasn't
Since I did a project with you. 20 years. So we're already at design review and we're at Far West. So this is Far West Design Review. This is the proposed demolition of a one-story commercial building. This is seeking final approval at 1407 West 117th Street. I have Dave Sambor, either here or online, who's speaking to this. I need to swear you in. Are you here? Are they online? Do we know? If we don't know if they're here, would you like us to table it or would you like us to wait? I mean, I know we have a big agenda, so I sort of feel like it might be more prudent to table this.
I think we should.
Okay, so how about if we table this one date certain for 2 weeks? Or well, not date certain because we don't know why they're not here. So
If they come later, should they be able to present is my question.
not if we table it,
I
I would
see.
say. So my sense is we have a pretty big agenda and they're not here. So we should table it. And then they can come back in 2 weeks.
Adam, do you have a sense of whether the applicant is on? He's not.
Should be Dave Sambor.
Yeah. Okay.
I didn't check the participant list. We'll check the participant.
Okay, so can we have a motion to table?
I make a motion that we table the proposed demolition of a one-story commercial building at W2023-003.
Second.
Motion and second, can we call the roll?
Anthony,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott.
Yes.
Shiori Clark.
Yes.
Motion carries. We actually need a second motion to table also the design review portion, not the demolition, the second one, which is Far West 2023-002. This is the design review approval of the same case. I'll need a motion to table that one as well.
I'll make a motion to table FW 2023-002, West 117th Street, Aging Air New Construction.
Second.
Call the roll?
Anthony,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry.
Yes.
McCray Scott.
Yes.
Shiori Clark.
Yes.
Motion carried. All right, we're at East Design Review. This is 2023-002. This is the proposed demolition of a two-story residential structure seeking final approval at 8910 Cumberland Avenue. And I have Maria Maselli from Maselli Dairy Products is presenting. Is that correct? We don't have anyone here today. Not sure.
How many people are on right now? Can you do a double check?
I
Sorry.
can see that there's quite a few people on.
Okay.
It's a pretty long list, but I don't know. All right, I think we should table this one too.
Okay, Madam Chair, I move,
With,
May I say, sorry, this is Dave Samworth, Rare Design Studio. I apologize for traveling and didn't realize there was a 1 hour time change until just now. So I apologize for that.
That's for the 117.
Yeah.
Madam Chair,
I think we are okay on time.
I move to table East 2023-002 proposed demolition of a two-story residential structure.
And I second?
We have a motion and a second. Can you call the roll?
Anthony,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Blucher,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McRae Scott.
Yes.
Shields, Clark.
Yes.
Motion carries. Would you like to go back? We're gonna have to remove these from the table, unfortunately.
It's okay. We have some time.
Okay. I actually am going to go out of order, sort of chair privilege. I feel like we should hear the design review case before the demolition, so we understand the project. So I'm going to, don't you agree? We should hear the project before the demolition. So I think we need to remove from the table the design review case, which is 2023-022. This is West 117th Street Urgent Care New Construction. I have a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to remove FW 2023-002 West 117th Street Urgent Care New Construction from the table.
And I second?
Anthony,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Blucher,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McRae Scott.
Yes.
Shields, Clark.
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, Dave, I need to swear you in first. So do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as you shall answer to the penalty of perjury?
I do.
Okay. All right, take it away.
Okay. So I know you, do I have control of the screen or just would like me to walk through here? Basically we laid out per the request, identifying a district map here. We're looking at a site that's right on the edge of Cleveland and Lakewood at the corner of 117th and Detroit. And this area here is currently zoned with the pedestrian overlay district, at this particular corner. The site here currently has a Pizza Hut located on that corner, and that's what we'll be looking to demo. And yeah, I totally understand it makes sense to have the demo wait until after we go through design review. But we're looking to remove the existing Pizza Hut, and we would be replacing it with an urgent care center. We see these are just photos to show what's the adjacent area. Picture 4 is the Walgreens. That is just on the other side in Lakewood. Photo 1 is looking back down Detroit. 2 is basically across the street to the north of our site. And photo 3 is a little bit further down on Detroit. And again, just some area photos again, seeing a little bit more of the Pizza Hut itself, what the existing conditions are, seeing more of what's directly across the street in photo 10, and just seeing down the walkway 6 heading back into Cleveland, down Detroit. This is this was our latest site plan, and what you'll see here is we're basically keeping the building in the same general location site, but we are moving it closer to both to 117th and closer to Detroit Avenue, both leaving the parking basically in the same configuration where it is. We are looking to convert a few of the spaces along 117th that were close to 117th, and those now are landscape and tree planting areas, which we'll see later in the landscape plan. We have, per the request of the design review meeting, we do have two entrance points now at that corner by Detroit, and we're creating more of a public plaza now with benches that could help engage the pedestrian area, which works out good in this location. You see there's an existing bus stop there that is very active. So this relates well to giving some plaza seating area close to that component. We're also keeping the building itself off of the sidewalk on 117th in order to get some green to soften that up. Currently, the look all the way down 117th from the curb into the sidewalk is done with tree lines and brick pavers. So that look would stay consistent and remain. But we would again be adding softening that edge up by keeping the building off of the sidewalk. And we'll see later in the landscape plan how that plays out. As far as building elevations, this is the kind of more prototypical coloration and look of an urgent care. The one thing that we do have is obviously versus a retail type use, being an urgent care with exam rooms, the amount of glass and visibility into what's going on inside is more, I guess, controlled by the tenant, not wanting to have that clear areas into those exam rooms. But basic, what we're doing here is we do have a block base with a thin brick above and more EIFS accents going on. Our previous design, the design review, had the entire upper section was all EIFS. So we went back and added more thin brick materials there and reduced the amount of EIFS that we were using. And see down the side, this is the west elevation is 117th elevation. That where we were able to locate some rooms that could have some more transparency to them in this area in order to get more transparent glass along there. And then we see we have on the north elevation, which is the elevation facing Detroit, we have that all as complete clear glass from grade up to 9 foot. And I believe I do have Peggy Brown. She's our landscape architect. She's on the call as well. And I guess maybe if she could, unmute and she could walk you through the landscape design and discuss the items that were requested from design review that we incorporated as well.
Thank you. Do I need to be sworn in?
Yes. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as you shall answer to the penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Go ahead.
All right.
Thank you.
As Dave was saying, that Pizza Hut is coming down and currently surrounding it is all turf with some shrubs and a bad looking tree in there. So we're getting rid of all the shrubs and all the turf and replacing the turf with a bed of ground covers, ornamental grasses, and some shrubs that are going to give some fall color, along with some other shrubs that are going to give an evergreen aspect to the base of the building. So that'll go, we're eliminating all the turf altogether. So it'll be a drought tolerant, very low maintenance landscaping that we're proposing here. And then along Detroit Avenue, we're coming back in with a series of alcovas that are going to be moved far enough away where they're not going to be impacted by the power lines there, but provide kind of canopy along the streetscape for enhanced pedestrian movement there, along with some additional trees. On the south side of the building will be a columnar tree where we'll be pulling out some of that asphalt that currently exists in order to extend that, I'll say, the building facade down farther to the south. It's going to create some of that massing that the building would provide, but instead of having an open gap with a lot of asphalt there, we're closing that gap down with this 2 boxes of trees with some shrubs in there to provide a barrier from the parking lot. The dumpster exists and we'll be softening up that with some ornamental grasses. And then at the turn at the parking lot, we're introducing another tree island, again with another Zelkova with some understory shrubs in there. You go on to the next one. Here's some pictures of some of the plant material with the columnar trees that I was proposing along with the Zelkovas, and then the shrubs with the building. The spireas are going to give some spring bloom along with a nice deep green during the summer, and then some brilliant fall color. The evergreens will help accent that a bit. And then with the little plazas in there, we're proposing the simple benches at a couple places alongside those walks by the front doors.
And also, the note here too we see is one of the note was reconsider far east side perimeter turf, possibly change to gravel, and Peggy has done that as well, which were one was gravel right now, one was a little strip of grass, I think only maybe 2 foot wide, so that was modified as well.
There's a schematic design approval, not final design approval. I know that demolition is approval, but just for the commission, just wanted to point it out that this is schematic, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
correct. This is schematic. We and would be going back for final design review prior to coming back to planning commission for final.
Okay. Okay. Commission members, any questions?
Madam Chair, Miss Anthony had her hand raised.
Oh, thank you. Erica?
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Dave for presenting. I'm not sure if this is at the schematic stage, my question, so if not, we can defer it. I know just east, I believe, of this location, there is an establishment, like a music venue, night bar club. And I was just curious on that east side of the parking lot. I recall, because I used to live in that area, there used to be a lot of overlap of parking into that Pizza Hut, or what would be the former Pizza Hut parking lot. And just curious if that has been considered in the design and how to keep that separation between that adjacent venue and what will be this new urgent care.
I'm not aware of that use. I do know there is a curb and a strip between the two, so I know there's no direct connection. So I guess anyone would need to go to pull in the current Pizza Hut parking lot. They're not really in adjoining parking, so it's still a separated. So I'm not sure what else can be done, because it isn't like they can freely flow within one parking area to the other without going back out to Detroit and in the other apron to the Pizza Hut. Are you talking about Pizza Hut overflowing into that venue, or the venue overflowing to Pizza Hut?
The venue flowing over to Pizza Hut. So maybe they might have continued that the cement, because I remember at one point there was access between that adjacent venue and the Pizza Hut parking lot. So just want to make sure that
that's where I think that's where that 2-foot grass strip is now, and that's what we're changing to gravel between, basically on that east edge there. So there wouldn't be any direct connection between the two.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to make 2 comments complimenting the presentation for its clarity in terms of context, because this should be an example of how projects should be submitted. Another thing is, I appreciate that, although this is a franchise model, they took an attempt to provide transparency and also move the building to the corner, because a lot of times the default is to pull the building away and focus more on cars. So I appreciate that effort.
Okay. Marika, I see your hand raised.
Thanks, Madam Chair. My question is really just around the PRO. Well, one, I would love, Dave, if you could just kind of walk through each of these points and tell us which ones you feel have already been addressed. I know you mentioned the Far East Side perimeter turf, but for the other points. But I guess my question more broadly is more for Shannon or planning, just wanting to understand whether this current design does fit within the guidelines of the PRO, or if there are other things that would need to happen to make it be compliant.
Shannon is on.
Or is there
Good
any part
morning.
of, Shannon's on, but Dave, is there any part of that you want to answer first before we have Shannon talk about the PRO, about these items on the list?
Well, on your current design review case, or I know you mentioned you mentioned turf and some others. So I wasn't sure exactly what specific area you want.
Can you see the screen? And there's I think, Marika, you mean the list that's on the
Yes,
screen,
I mean
right?
the list on the
Oh,
screen.
yes,
To
yes.
try to
So it's
talk about which ones you're addressing.
Sure. So the canopy, we do have a 5-foot projected canopy that wraps the corner of that building where that seating area is. There really wasn't area to be adding another exterior structure, because we do have the plantings and the trees that we're trying to get along the outside edge. We did eliminate a bunch of the ephes and change that to thin brick on the upper area. We did add the southeast area parking lot, that landscape island that was discussed. We did change that one area to gravel, and we have added more large trees. So that's how we did approach and address each one of those items.
And what about the first two?
Oh, well, sorry, wrap corner.
On
Yes.
that, if I may, on that one, we talked about that, and just to keep it it was kind of a security issue and everything, not to put it out at the corner on our property to call in the public right there on the corner. But so we provided that plaza and more of an open, from what it was originally with just a 6-foot walking up to the buildings. We've expanded those areas at both doors to be more plaza-like and kept all the activity closer to the doors where it's more easily watched, and to keep eyes on it instead of it being out on the corner where it's going to be a little bit less visible from the building to see what's going on. And I think there's another mini park. It was suggested to be, there's one across the street, kitty corner to this one in Lakewood.
Right, and then for the item number 2, the original design review we showed had all the windows on 117th were all opaque, all kind of spandrel glass. And so that's where the discussions went of, could we put a wall back in further to create an alcove to put displays, since we were not having any transparent glass over there. So we did, we went back to the tenant, reworked the design in order to shift as many spaces as we could, which could have the more transparent glass over there. So that's why instead of going the hallway route, we actually found ways to get transparent glass when we originally did not have any on 117th.
To the chair, if I may, there are staff comments by Shannon Leonard and also by the planner Adam Davenport. So if we could have them address some of those.
So it's the PRO. Okay,
Yeah,
would you like to go?
I can take a first crack at it. So the main kind of discussion around this project is mostly because of the PROs on Detroit and West 117. And so the use with the urgent care and the wanting the privacy of those rooms is kind of in some conflict with the PRO glazing requirements. So if maybe Xavier, if you want to flip back to kind of the photos across the street, the CVS or other buildings on the corner as well have sort of those fake windows with advertisements in there. And so our kind of discussion and goal at the committee level is to create a little bit more active use inside right there at the corner. So Far West saw this project on February 1st. So it looks like David and his team have been working on it since then to create some more of those, rework the interior rooms to have more active use and have more transparent glass on the corner, which is good. They also added that entrance towards the directly facing north towards Detroit, which was a request as well of the committee. So the PRO, just for more edification, has specific glazing requirements to the tune, I think, of like 65% of the frontage of the building facade on these streets. And so I think this is probably getting more in line with that percentage, certainly. So I think Far West will be pleased to kind of take that evaluation at a final level.
But I think Marika's question is really interesting. Is a variance required?
So this project will come back to you when it's on the final, or when it's up for final review, it'll come back to you for the conditional use in the PRO also.
Okay.
So similar to like there was an Arby's renovation in Cam's a couple years ago, or the Wendy's across from Ignatius, that sort of thing. These existing kind of sites that require a conditional use in the PRO.
Sure, we'll come back. So when they come for final, we'll do both.
Exactly, because staff felt like evaluating the project in its current form, we knew it's going to change, so the percentages were going to change. So the request actually might be different at the final level, which will be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Marika, does that answer your question? But I do see Shannon might want to add a little more. Shannon?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of it's Shannon Leonard, City Planning. It's up to you all, whether you want to handle the conditional uses today or on the next meeting. The design is dependent on the conditional uses being approved. There's about 4 conditional uses needed here as it relates to the site itself, as well as it being an institutional use with the PRO lining West 117th and Detroit.
Okay.
And I'd be more than happy to walk you through those, or we can wait to the next planning commission.
I prefer to wait because it is a procedural, well, not on the agenda. It's procedurally not here. So I prefer to wait, but it's good to know that actually what the recommendations here are actually getting further towards the PRO. And it's good that sort of a collaborative process, but we will see it again.
I think so.
I guess
So
my
Mike-
my question was
Go ahead.
really just, well, I think this is all really helpful to understand. And I guess my question, as regards to the PRO was sort of also wondering, you know, I agree with August that it's nice that the building is near the corner, but to me, this design, I realize it's a franchise and there's probably standardized kind of layouts and designs for the floor plans, but it is still a somewhat, you know, the building is still not actually meeting the street edge the way that the Walgreens and the high school on the other corners of this intersection do. It still feels somewhat pulled back. There's still obviously a very prominent, you know, off-street parking lot. And so I guess my question was, you know, would it make it closer to kind of the letter of the spirit of the PRO if this building were to move even closer to the corner on both Detroit and 117th? So that was kind of just a thought I was having as I was looking at the layout of this, and which essentially it looks like is sort of repeating the placement of the Pizza Hut building, which is still pulled back from the corner. So I don't know. I'm not saying that I like falling on my sword over this, but it's just my observations.
So Marika, if I could, you know, address that. Obviously, from our standpoint, we'd be fine moving it closer. I guess when we looked at this, when I think about the intent of a pedestrian overlay district and that whole pedestrian feel, and this is some things we got some feedback from the neighborhood groups as well. Having a softened edge, so it wasn't just concrete from the road to the building frontage, it was a more pedestrian feel for them. So like right now, there's mature trees right on 117th. Right now, if we put our building up against the sidewalk, you'd have to take out those trees. We'd be into those trees, we'd be in the root system, we'd be in the canopy section. So the idea of keeping that building 5 foot off 117th allows us to leave room for those trees and to soften up with the landscape strip in that area. And then we do have this odd corner. And I think the idea that the request to kind of have this plaza area, this public, kind of this open plaza area, we kind of need to be back a little bit in order to achieve that as well. So I guess from a tenant standpoint, wasn't really driving putting the building where it is. It was more of responding to like more of the intent of what that pedestrian overlay district was probably looking to achieve and giving that little bit of space to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? We'll need a motion for schematic approval with, even though you're saying you're addressing them, we're gonna acknowledge the design review comments so that when you come back, we'll see them all. So with conditions, if you will.
I make a motion for schematic approval on FW 2023-002, West 117th Street urgent care and construction with the conditions as outlined by the Far West Design Review.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can you call the roll?
Anthony,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Luker,
Yes.
Curry.
Yes.
McCray Scott,
Yes.
Shield Clark.
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, we need a motion to remove from the table the demolition and first, and then a motion for demolition. So this was 2023-003. This is the demolition of 1407 West 117th Street. I can make a motion.
I'll make a motion to remove the table of East 2023-02, proposed demolition of a two-story residential structure.
Second.
Sorry, that was.
Is that the right
Oh,
one?
no, it's
2023-003. 03.
03.
Okay, that's fine. 03, and we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Call the roll.
Anthony,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Luker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott,
Yes.
Shield Clark.
Yes.
Yes, it was removed from the table, so now we need to approve the demolition. of the, it's lovingly known as the Pizza Hut.
I
So
have no
can I
love
have a
lost for that
motion?
franchise.
We need a motion for demolition.
I move to approve the demolition of 2023-03, a one-story commercial building.
I second.
Motion and a second, call the roll.
Anthony,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Shields, Clark.
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, thank you, Dave. We are in Eastern Standard Time Zone. If you did not know, I'm just kidding.
Yes,
All
I
right.
I just left there last night and
I'm just kidding.
date and forgot you, so I appreciate everyone's time here.
Yes. Now we're going on to Northeast Design Review. This is 2023-032. This is the Hitchcock Center. It's new construction. This is also schematic design approval at 1227 Ansel Road. Brian, are you, oh wait, it says the applicant withdrew the project. The planning
was
commission
tabled.
subsequently tabled. Are they here? Should we remove it from the table?
Yeah,
Is-
good morning. This is Brian
Brian.
Garrity.
Okay, so Brian, first we're gonna remove it from the table, then I'm gonna swear you in, okay? So I need a motion for this one to remove it from the table. And just give me,
I make a motion that NE 2023-032, excuse me, the Hitchcock Center new construction be removed from the table.
Second.
motion and a second, call the roll.
Anthony,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray, Scott,
Yes.
Shield, Erie, Clark.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. All right, now we're gonna hear the case, the same case. Once again, this is schematic approval for 1227 Ansel Road. Brian, I need to swear you in. Is there anyone else that's gonna speak to this besides you?
I also have on the call with me, Mark Dodds with the Finch Group. He'll probably speak as well.
Okay, do you both, that's fine. Do you both swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as you shall answer to the penalty of perjury?
I do.
Okay, take it away. This is schematic.
Good morning. So the Hitchcock Center for Women project is located on Ansel Road above the Cultural Gardens in Cleveland. The image that you're looking at on our cover sheet with the perspective, their existing facility is at the bottom right. It's that gray building. It's a historic seminary building that is not efficient for their operations. So they've been securing funding to build a new facility on the adjacent property that they own. This slide is just kind of showing where we sit. You know, as I said, it's right over the Cultural Gardens on Ansel Road by Superior Avenue.
Just to let you know.
Site demolition, the existing site is mostly a combination of just greenfield and some old asphalt paving. There are a couple of existing structures. There's a small greenhouse and also an existing, I think it was an old handball court, both of which are unoccupied. Both buildings are going to come down and the site's going to be completely clear.
Pretty sure. Or Superior. Might be close.
Next couple of slides are just some views along Ansel Road looking towards the property. So there you can see, the existing empty site. So the site plan, early discussions with planning a little while back, we did previously have the building pushed towards the back of the site. It was requested that we bring the front elevation of the building in alignment with the existing seminary building. We are providing a total of let me back up. There's two primary components to this project. We call it residential treatment, which will serve the same function as what the Hitchcock Center is doing now. It's treatment for women with substance abuse issues, and they also allow their kids to live with them. That's one part of the building, which is kind of we'll call it the right wing that goes up and down. The wing on the left that runs left to right is going to be a supportive housing component with 53 total units. So we're providing 43 parking spaces for the supportive housing, and then there's 22 parking spaces for the residential treatment on the right. Detention is, which you'll see when we get a little bit farther in. We had put a fair amount of detention in with all the impervious surface that's being added to the site. So we split it to the back of the property and the front of the property because underground retention was just not feasible from a dollars perspective for this project. Go to the next slide. So here's our landscape plan that we presented for schematic approval. You can see the rain gardens in the front and the back of the property. Some trees are going to be lost along Ansel Road because because of the stormwater detention, it just gets into the drip line and they're not going to be salvageable. We will save what we can, and we're going to prune them and clean them up and add a substantial amount more of trees, within the property and also along Ansel Road and Derby Avenue. We are introducing courtyards, exterior courtyards. There will be a secure courtyard for the residential treatment side with playground structures, hopefully in the future for the kids who will be staying there with their mothers. And there will be courtyards for the supportive housing, both for the units on the first floor as well as courtyards serving the common areas, like the community center, fitness room, places like that. So, you can keep going to the next slides. So these are just showing like the decorative. We're proposing a decorative fence along the public facing streets, a 6-foot high aluminum decorative fence, permeable pavers for the courtyards and benches within the property, specifically by the dedicated playground area. So this slide was just our tree preservation plan, which we were required to submit. And then the following slides, I don't know if they're of any general interest, but it's our SWIP plan for the project. Site lighting plan, we're proposing a couple different, we're trying to illuminate pretty much the entire site. Foot candle levels obviously vary based on proximity to the fixtures, but what we're proposing is the light pole that you're seeing there kind of on the left in the middle of the page for illuminating the parking lot. And then the decorative fixture in the middle will be placed strategically along the sidewalks, along Ansel Road, and also the sidewalks within the property. And then the sconce will be placed around different parts of the first floor of the building to give the building facade some illumination at night. It's our photometric plan, so you can kind of see the levels of light throughout the site. I mean, we're averaging, in the neighborhood of about 1.5 foot candles in the parking lots, and a little bit lower than that along the sidewalk. And then we've got higher light concentration along various public-facing elevations of the building. Kind of gives you an idea of what our light levels look like. So, all right, so going lastly to the building itself, the interior program and the exterior elevations and materiality. So like I mentioned, this building is literally going to be split into 2 buildings due to how it's being funded, between public and private financing. The blue floor plan on the right, that's the residential treatment. The first floor is some communal areas like a playroom for the children, communal dining hall, and there's also administration areas housed there as well. On the left-hand side, the supportive housing, it's the common areas, fitness room, communal laundry, community room, arts and crafts room, and a couple of two-bedroom units in back of house. And the upper floors.
This is Mark Bowser, the Finch Group. I'm going to let Brian take a break for a minute. The reason that this project is configured as 2 separate buildings that are joined together is that the residential treatment, which is the blue part of these plans, is being funded primarily through grants that we've gotten from Cuyahoga County, the City of Cleveland, and the Cleveland Clinic Foundation. And its operations are funded through Medicaid and Medicare. The green portion of the building is being funded through bond gap financing from the Ohio Housing Finance Agency and 4% low-income housing tax credits, as well as some other funding from the city and the county. Its operations are being funded by project-based Section 8. We have 53 units assigned to this building. What that means is that the green portion of the building is being treated as supportive housing. That's a new program for Hitchcock. And because it's funded with project-based Section 8, we cannot discriminate. So there is a probability that men will be staying in the supportive housing, whereas the treatment side is strictly for women and their children up to the age of 12. When the women are in residential treatment, it's a 30 to 45 day program. Historically, it has been shown that if they transition into sober housing, that their likelihood of staying sober and staying employed increases dramatically. The percentages are quite astounding. And so while it is project-based Section 8 and we can't discriminate, we are allowed to give a preference to graduates of the residential treatment as the first people that are allowed to stay in supportive housing. And so basically the reason for two buildings is that they're funded separately, both in terms of the capital for the construction and also operationally. But they will look like a single building as you will see.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that, Mark. I think that's helpful. Probably to talk about the exterior elevations, it's probably helpful to go to the last slide that has our 3D perspectives. So the perspective at the bottom is the public-facing elevation that you'll see on Ansel Road. The elevation at the top is the rear of the building, backing up towards the cultural gardens. So when we first came to Northeast Design Review, as far as the overall aesthetic of the building goes, one of the comments we got was that it looked a little too institutional. And that, I think a lot of what was driving that is the way the elevations were designed and arranged. We had a lot of very strong horizontal banding. So we took that into account and we got rid of the horizontal banding outside of the main brick, prominent corner feature, and broke up the elevations vertically. So it started to read more as housing, like units stacking on top of each other. Materials that we're proposing to use is primarily face brick on the first floor of the building with some aluminum storefront punched openings and so brick as well. On that corner piece, the idea being that it's kind of the color tone will be similar to the adjacent historic seminary building that Hitchcock currently occupies. So sort of an acknowledgement to that. And then the other primary materials are a fiber cement Nichiha type panel. The white is sort of like a flat monolithic panel, and then the brown panels are a wood grain finish, reflecting some of the wood siding of the single family homes scattered around the neighborhood. Upper floor windows will be vinyl windows. Primarily they'll be white except for the brick element. We're going to change those to black so they kind of blend in with the paneling and don't provide as stark of a contrast. And then on the back of the building, we're proposing vinyl siding of a couple different colors that match as closely as possible to the Nichiha panels on the front, and then a lower brick wainscot just for durability. So, Mark, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add. Otherwise, I was just going to turn it over to the committee.
Okay. I have a question back to Mark, what you described. If you can go back to the site plan. Mark, you said there are two funding sources, the first floor plan's fine, or the first floor plan. There are two funding sources. No, the first floor plan, sorry. The one that's blue and green.
Oh.
There are two funding sources. One is the blue and the green, and the Section 8. One is Section 8. Is that correct? And the other one is market rate? Is it?
No, the blue or the residential treatment is the capital dollars are coming from grants from the city, the county, and the Cleveland Clinic Foundation.
Right.
And so that will be built debt-free for the Hitchcock Center. And then their operations are covered the way they are now, where they get
Got it.
reimbursed from Medicaid and they get some funding from the Adams Board.
Got it.
Uh,
And there's
one of the
one front
advantages-
door. I guess what I'm asking is there's one front door to this building.
The front door for the residential treatment is in that sort of knuckle on the right-hand side. You can see where the courtyard is on the exterior. I can't
Mhm.
point because I don't have control.
Got it.
So there's an entrance for the residential treatment. The residential
it.
treatment part of the project has to be kept very secure.
Got it.
Many of the women coming here are coming out of very difficult.
Oops. He became muted himself.
Okay, well, I can just say why I was asking, but I think I know, the reason I was asking, and I think he's answering it, is they're two separate things, which is fine. I'm just always conscious of the idea of calling out certain things, and that people would say that's the Section 8 wing, and that's that part worries me some. But I think in this case, the rationale is the treatment center, and its requirements are very different. It's not a separation of funding that requires, let's say, a different entrance for Section 8 versus Market or something else like that, which is what I was worried about, but I understand it, so it's okay that he's muted. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I think he's still trying to talk, and I believe.
Mark, you're
Mark
still
is-
muted.
I'll make some staff comments after.
Okay. Were you gonna say something?
Yeah, here's
Apologize, I
where,
hit the wrong button. If you look very
Okay.
carefully, see where the two elevators are?
Yeah.
We're actually showing a door. See, we
Mhm.
want to give
I see it.
the Hitchcock Center the flexibility that if one of the residents of supportive housing still needs to come to the treatment area for counseling, they don't have to go outside. Now that door is locked and the staff, will have to let them in and then let them back into the supportive housing. And it's not an exit door. So
Okay.
the two buildings function independently relative to exits. But Lily, I think back to your comment about it, the appearance of the building, we've tried very hard to make it look like one building. Okay. So that it has a cohesiveness and it reads like the Hitchcock Center.
Okay, thank you. August has. a comment.
Madam Chair, I think we may not have to unpack all this today, but I think from an urban design standpoint and the flow of the site, it would help tremendously if we can identify how people come and go. There seems to be some very secure gates and fences, which makes it feel really institutional. How do people approach this building? How do people drive into the site? How does the community react to all that? I'm not really confident that I understand all that right now. And maybe since this is schematic design, maybe they could help unpack that with a diagram or something to better illustrate how this facility will work within the community, but also within the site.
Rich, you want to make some comments?
Sure. So to your point, Commission Member Bruker, consider adding that to one of the conditions of the design review to provide a circulation plan for final review. I did want to give some background as a reminder to the commission. This did come before you last year for rezoning, so the zoning is all set. We did request them to align the building with the existing historic building next door, which they complied with, and we are glad for that. The original plan was to have a parking lot front, the building, and then have the building set back. So they have aligned the building that way. Overall, we would say the design review committee's suggestions, recommendations should be considered, as well as your recommendation to have a circulation plan for the final.
I think Marco's trying to say something, unless we're done.
I think Shannon has her hand raised. Is that old, Shannon, with your hand raised? Marika does. Marika, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I agree with what August is saying around circulation and trying to kind of understand how people will be able to flow in and out of this space. I think the other thing that this is really, I guess, just more of a suggestion, but this feels like a large site with a lot of grass plantings, but as far as I can tell, almost no kind of outdoor space that the women who are using this facility would be able to use. I'm just curious if you had any plans for any kind of outdoor, probably like shaded or sort of like private outdoor spaces. It just feels like there's so much room, and yet somehow the building actually feels like still sort of exposed. I don't know.
Well, we do have, I don't know, if maybe the first floor, or maybe the landscape plan might be best to pull up. Because we do have a dedicated outdoor courtyard adjacent to the playroom and the community.
The cafeteria.
Yeah, cafeteria, dining hall.
Yeah.
And then immediately outside of that, we do have a dedicated area that is eventually going to be used for we'll have playground equipment for any of the children who are
back
staying
there,
there with
okay.
mom. We like the idea. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but one of the reasons, I mean, that is what we're giving them, but we also wanted to kind of tuck back a little bit out of the public view just for security purposes.
Yeah, I guess I just, I think, I didn't see that there's a playground. I think that's great. I guess I'm looking at the site plan and it feels like there's a lot of green space that is just going to feel like ornamental grass that isn't actually space that anybody would want to hang out. So I think that's just a broad piece of feedback I have, is like, is there a way to take some of that large amount of landscaped space along Ansel Road and or that stormwater basin back there and actually make it into more of a seating area that could be sort of more specifically designed as like peaceful outdoor space that people could hang out in the summer that would still feel private from the street. So that maybe that, goes against some of the other sort of conditions around connections to the other facility, but that would be, I'm thinking about it, if I was a woman living there, I would want to be able to have a space where I could hang out outside, when it's nice outside.
We could add that as a consideration, but, I think you can think about it. I think you're saying, Marika, this is a suggestion for to think about.
Yeah.
So I don't see any other comments. I think we'll need a motion. I think we should add August's comment to whoever makes the motion for incorporating the design review comments.
Sure, I'll try.
Go ahead.
I move to approve schematic design of item NE 2023-32 with the 4 comments from design review and the stipulation that the applicant come back with how this site's being used with circulation and considerations to other outdoor activity that might be more amenable to folks who are transitioning out or transition out of the treatment center.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second?
And a second. Call the roll.
Anthony,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Booker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
Craig Scott,
Yes.
Shio Erie Clark.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll see you soon at final approval. The last design review item is Euclid Corridor 2023-005. This is the Cleveland Clinic Innovation District Research Buildings. This is for schematic approval. I see Dallas Felder and Jamie Schwartzberg. Anyone else? I will need to swear you in. So is there anyone else, Dallas, on your team besides the two of you?
I believe there are representatives from the Cleveland Clinic.
Okay.
Yeah, Travis Tyson from Cleveland Clinic.
Yeah,
Okay,
please.
Travis. So all of you, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, as you shall answer to the penalty of perjury?
Yes.
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 Okay. All right, take it away. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Travis Tyson. I'm the Director of Planning for the Cleveland Clinic Enterprise, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to come again and present our Cleveland Innovation District project. This project is a new global center for pathogen and human health research, and it'll be a cornerstone for the Cleveland Innovation District along Cedar Avenue. And as you know, it's part of the Jobs Ohio initiative. This project itself will bring about an estimated 1,000 jobs to the city by 2029. And, you know, we've been working closely with FRDC and the Fairfax community, as well as their master planning architect, UDA, as we develop this project and they develop their master plan. We're excited to see this project come together and what it's going to do for not only the clinic, but the community and the city of Cleveland, and most importantly, the healthcare research and outcome around the world. We are here today seeking schematic design approval by the committee. And as you know, we received unanimous approval from the Euclid Corridor Design Review Committee yesterday. As we continue to develop this final design of the project, we will take into consideration the Design Review Committee's recommendations and continue to work with the community partners and get their feedback as the design progresses. So we are excited to bring the project to the city here today for approval as part of the Cleveland Innovation District. And we appreciate your time today. So with that, I would like to turn it over to the presentation to Dallas Felder from HOK, and he can introduce himself and Jamie as the project team, and they will present the project today. Dallas.
Good morning. I'm Dallas Felder with HOK, and I'm a design principal here at HOK in Chicago, working on this project. I'm working closely with Jamie Schwartzberg. And Jamie, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. Jamie Schwartzberg. We're local Cleveland landscape architects from Daru Landscape Architecture.
So to get started, the project is located on the campus itself, at the south edge of the campus, at the corner of Cedar and 100th. And if you go to the next slide, please. We can see there's a real opportunity for the south-facing part of the campus to really create a public facade or a public entry into the campus at 100th and Cedar. So it's really the idea of some of the institute buildings are almost backside in this. And so the biorepository, GCIC, and then the new building, CBA and CBB, now start to create a kind of activated edge or urban corridor, along with then the Meyer development that's at 105th and Cedar. So the existing context right now is a loading dock and service area where the CBA building is, and then the CBB building is a parking lot. People using this building will be coming from the west parking garage. I'm sorry, from the east parking garage at 105th. And then we looked at this as a real opportunity to kind of create a welcoming, again, entry into the campus, and then intentionally setting back the buildings, aligning with the existing campus buildings, but also to create green space or park space or pocket park space at the front of the buildings to engage the neighborhood in a more gentle manner. And Jamie will talk about that next.
So what you're looking at is the overall landscape plan for buildings A and B, and we've tried to look at both the pedestrian movement outside of the buildings, how people are walking by here, where they're going to want to cut corners, how employees from the clinic are going to go when they're walking to the Meyer to get lunch, where people from the neighborhood are going as they're cutting through into the clinic, and also kind of really trying to bring some pedestrian traffic up to the building itself. And HOK has designed a really thoughtful building that, despite the level of security that's required for research, is really attempting to bring some of this activity, make it very visible to the neighborhood, and really engage people with the incredible work that's going to be going on here. The clinic is also has been very thoughtful about the employees in the building, and that they are going to be looking for places to come outside, to have a coffee, to get lunch, to take a little break, take a phone call. So we've kind of placed seating close to the lobby so that it sort of forms an extension of the lobby. And you can come outside and sit, but also take a quick break, take a little bit longer break, enjoy the landscape. And then you'll see some benches closer down to the corner. Those are adjacent to the existing bus stop. You can go to the next slide. So this is a closer view of Building A. Building A is much more of the kind of mechanical equipment, loading dock sort of uses for the research. You can see we have a large loading dock that faces onto 100th, and we've really been trying to work with the clinic. They've been great about what that pedestrian experience is like and how we keep it as softened as possible. So we're still working through that. And then you can see the landscape, the street trees kind of starting to try to create that gateway between the two buildings. You can go to the next slide as Building B. And here I think you have a little bit of a closer view of kind of where people are being brought up to the main lobby. You can see the quantum computing. There's wet labs on the west corner, and that's going to have co-working on the inside. So we really want people to be able to see the sort of inside-outside access that's going on there. And you can also see where the two black arrows are on the south side of the building. Those are the main entrances. So coming and going at the beginning and end of the day, we've really tried to activate the front of this building and make it really clear that it's the front of the building by bringing employees through this way. The only other thing, this was asked at design review, so I'll bring it up here, but there was a question about the space between the east end of the building and the substation, which is currently asphalt, and the proposed condition would be that is restored to grass. And then there's a new connector path in there that leads to the bike storage for employees that's at the northeast corner of the building. I think next slide. This is site furnishing. So the strata beam bench, I think you've seen before. This is the bench that they're starting to kind of use across the campus, kind of create a little bit of a cohesive furnishings palette. And then we've got some low lighting. People come and go from this building all hours of the day and night. It's not a 9 to 5 building, so I'm thinking about lighting, and then also litter receptacles and outdoor bike racks for community and for facilitating all the things that we want people to be doing out here, eating lunch, bringing a meeting outside, enjoying the sunshine. Next slide, I believe, is planting. So plant palette, we have a variety of evergreens, shade trees, and a flowering spring tree. And then the landscape is a kind of clean, but more, I think, floriferous palette than the clinic has had in the past. So we're really working with them to expand that and keep their clean Zen look, but also bring a little bit more friendliness and warmth to the landscape. Next slide. Dallas.
Thank you, Jane. So just to cover some of the other things we're looking at with the landscape is creating sort of smaller rooms or pocket parks and potentially artwork for the landscape. But we intentionally on the ground level moved the main entry, employee entry, and public entry to Cedar Avenue so that people flowing into the building are activating Cedar Avenue. The CBA building, the entry is at the northeast corner. And that's just because of the connectivity to the existing Lerner Research Institute, as well as the CBA building is less private or less public, where it's a little bit more secure than the CBB building. And then CBB at the ground level, as Jamie mentioned, so we have wet lab, research lab, so people moving around the building will be able to see in and see science research happening. And then we have amenities. So the amenity spaces that are labeled here, one potentially the coffee bar or coffee shop. Then we have the quantum computing computer, which is like it's sort of the heart of the building. That is now being a more kind of visible element. And then the other amenity space is a classroom lecture space for potential events, outreach to the community, and then bringing public into that main space. And then on the upper floors, if you go to the next slide. So the typical upper floors are research labs and offices. And so again, wet labs are basically filling these flexible floor plates so that they're reconfigurable. But the idea is that on the east, west, and south elevations that in CBB are all glass, allowing for the kind of transparency into the building, allowing for actually seeing the people working in the building and seeing what's happening within the building. And then we're, maintaining a simple diagram or a simple mass right now. We're in schematic design and we're sort of exploring how that mass is articulated. We go to the next. Just this, again, the section. So understanding how the section works. Obviously, the buildings are mechanically intensive because of the research and air exchange. So we have larger mechanical spaces than would in a normal building. And then we have a connecting bridge. So there's the CBB bridge, which connects to CBA and CBB. A lot of the proprietary research that happens in CBA and CBB needs to stay within the building. And so with us researchers working in each building, the ability to move without going to the street levels is very important. So you go to the next. And then this is just a sort of first blush massing study rendering, looking at that gateway or that idea of the entry, how the curtain wall and the materiality turn the corner, how we create that sort of opening or that welcoming space. Again, looking at the transparency within the building. Materiality wise, we're looking at various glass types to kind of create a pixelated facade that becomes a little bit like an impressionist painting, looking to kind of activate the kind of seriality of that facade. And then in the upper parts of the buildings, we're looking at a precast panel that has more articulation than typical precast to create shadow and give the facade a little bit of depth. Right now, we're working on studies too of how to get these things to work better together, and then looking at how we push the mechanical back so it really reads more like a 4-story building at the street line, and then the upper floors can kind of start to recede a little bit. So those are the massing studies we're currently working on. If you go to the next. Just a scalar relationship to the existing buildings, this NC building to the left. And then these buildings are in similar height relationship to the building NC, which are the buildings that are already on Cedar Avenue. And then looking at just the kind of massing and the articulation of the massing is the sort of ground plane cutting back or cutting in and creating that shadow and protective space, helping to release the mass from the ground plane. You go to the next. And then just the relationship between the two buildings, the street relationship. So looking at how we've tried to pull the building off the street as much as possible, again, to kind of create that green buffer or green edge. And then Jamie's group working to kind of activate that space or to create space within the green rooms within that space. If you go to the next, please. And then this would be looking from the north towards the south. So the BBS garage covers a majority of the north side of the building on CBA, and then the existing building for NA, building NA at Lerner covers a majority. So we're still paying our attention though to that articulation all the way around, because you'll see these buildings, even though they're being blocked by their adjacent buildings, you'll see the tops of these buildings from the campus, and you'll see them from other campus buildings. So we're being mindful not to have a backside. If you go to the next. Just a sectional relationship, again, showing this is the CBA building, so you can see the Cedar Avenue CBA and then the existing building NA, and then the scalar relationships between the two. And then go to the next. And then again, just showing the distance, setback distance and the elevated. So the ground floors are taller than normal, so that we can try to create a more transparent feel at least at that level. And then the relationship to Cedar Avenue, that setback or that a little bit more kind of boulevard type space versus, more, or creating that kind of street edge, but with a green band. Let me go to the next. And then again, just the west facade of CB building. What you're seeing is, that's as you're coming along 100th, the edge. So again, the idea of the materiality, turning the corner and wrapping around. To go to the next. Again, then the sectional relationship, between Cedar Avenue and CBB, and then GCCI across the street. So not creating an intense canyon, trying to create a more open space between the buildings by setting CBB back. If you go to the next. So just an overall rendering perspective of kind of that green space, park space, and then the kind of emphasis of how Cedar becomes this kind of green space where the buildings aren't completely pushed to the street edge, allowing for that kind of proportionality in that kind of urban section. And then some of the things we're just talking about the green space itself is creating the kind of space within those spaces. And then the kind of procession to the building coming from the corners or the edges instead of the directly front axis, so that you're moving into the building from the edges or from the streets and not and you're discouraging drop off in the middle or the front of the building, but still having the main entry component on Cedar Avenue. And then again, just looking at the materiality. And our next series of studies, we'll start to look at how we kind of push the upper mass back. And I believe that's what we have. Questions?
Thank you. Commission members, I have one question, comment, but go ahead.
I'll be nice, Madam Chair.
Okay.
I'm not convinced by your words concerning community engagement and how this building engages with the community. You've done nothing, in my opinion, to demonstrate how the north side of this street interacts with the south side, which is already under development, in my opinion, how people go connect to that. As relates to the space you said that this community is going to use, that's great, but unless you're intentional, unless it's programmed, unless you communicate it, it's just another space. Because there's a lot of healing that has to happen between the Fairfax community and the clinic. And lastly, and more importantly, I think there should be more consideration given to how people use that space out in front of the building. I mean, you say you have bike racks, but there's other forms of transportation. You have e-bikes, you have all types of other forms and modes. And I think you should really look at how that impacts your intention here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm going to follow on that, and you might want to comment, but it sort of builds on what August was saying about this potentially interesting, could be different type of space that the clinic might start to institute. Is I think the question is there any possibility, and I guess this is to the clinic representative, that the amenity space within the innovation building itself, that you called amenity, and I know amenity is broad, sort of gathering space, if you will, or convening space. Is there any possibility for any kind of retail there, like a coffee shop or something, that actually might punch out externally to the street, to this park space, to some real activation that might create the collisions that are both required and important around innovation and innovation buildings that might have the community and the content that is here that is so rich around innovation have a place to meet. And I think the place to meet is actually around something that would attract people to the space itself. So obviously gathering a coffee shop or something, but not, I know it's not a standard way that the clinic thinks about the ground floor uses across its entire campus, but can it punch out? Can it have some outdoor seating on this green space? Can it feel a little more like retail, at least one portion of this sort of center space? And I say this because I think one of the issues, not just around each individual building that we see, is that the kind of incremental erosion of any reason to be here other than drive and park your car happens incrementally. It's hard for us to react building by building to this issue of such a large footprint that does not have these kind of granular spaces that might have this happen. So as I recall, it's just a suggestion, but like, it's hard to say this building should do it or that building should do it. It's a kind of incremental thing that's created an ability. But I do think here specifically, especially around innovation and around this entrance, that there could be a small way to try this differently for the clinic, especially makes sense here versus, let's say, at a strictly medically related building to the clinic. This is about innovation, and it's about also making innovation more apparent and accessible to the community that it goes on here too. So that was my comment. And I see Marika has her hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to, I agree with what both of the other commission members have said. I think as I'm looking at this building, I think it looks handsome, but I really struggle with, and I think this is also true of many of the clinic buildings across the main campus, which I spend a lot of time at, so I'm quite familiar with this area. The sort of pedestrian experience, or the way that these buildings kind of meet the street and kind of general consideration of people that might be attempting to come to a clinic building without parking in the parking garage, is, I think, very difficult across many of the buildings. And this one feels like it's going to be similar. Like, even just, things as simple as like, I don't think there's any on-street parking anywhere around here. There might be on like the south side of Cedar, but just this idea that like, it's this public plaza amenity space, and yet really the only easy, or not easy, but the main way to access this would be probably going and parking on the sixth floor of that other parking garage, then making your way all the way down back into this amenity space at the ground floor. I just feel like there could be more consideration around the way that the public, and especially, somebody that might live near here that would be taking the bus or biking or using a scooter, like August was saying, or coming here in some way that isn't only coming in through the massive parking garages, taking all of the, above ground walkways so that you can avoid ever being on the street. I think that would be really helpful and beneficial. And I like the idea of there being a portion of this building on the ground floor that could extend out from the main mass to sort of even kind of symbolically reach out to the street, especially if there is already consideration of there being a coffee shop or other type of space on the ground floor there. So, I think those are sort of my comments in general. I think it's exciting that there's this innovation project happening, but I think that making the actual physical experience of the building, especially at the ground floor, mirror this idea of innovation and kind of welcoming would be very helpful and beneficial. Thanks.
I think the director has a comment.
Yes. While I'm not a member of the commission, I did want to make some comments on behalf of the staff and also my opinion as the director. We keep coming back to how important Cedar Avenue is. This has been a theme over the past year. Cedar Avenue is a critically important street to the history of our city and our neighborhood. And in past discussions with the clinic, I'll say this, the clinic themselves has talked about Cedar Avenue as a zipper between the buildings on the north side and the buildings on the south side, which are neighborhood scale. These are neighborhood buildings meant to connect with the neighborhood. I don't see much connection with the neighborhood scale here, and I understand that research buildings and medical buildings do need to have a certain type of building code, building typology. But the stepping down, you know, towards the neighborhood, you know, I just think that there's a lot that could be, you know, analyzed and discussed with regard to what Commission Member Sherry Clark shared about how we could step down towards the street more. And I think if we're going to be inviting 1,000 more jobs through Jobs Ohio, and this is such a critically important building, I think we can do better for the Fairfax neighborhood here and that connection and the radical welcome. So wanted to put that statement out there that we really need to be thinking about Cedar and how this acts as that zipper to the neighborhood.
I'd like to make one more point. It's more personal, but I think it's relevant for the research community, not just the clinic. I'm talking about Case and UH and whoever plays in that ecosystem. I have a son who's 20 years old, who's in chemical engineering, and he's trying to find internships. He's looking everywhere else but here, which means we're not opening our hands and embracing that community of young, smart thought leaders, the next generation of thought leaders. And so we need to really start thinking about that. And these types of solutions aren't getting us any closer. So I just wanted to share that, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. This is, if there are any other comments, this is schematic design approval. There were some committee recommendations also from the Euclid corridor that are listed here. I think it would be nice to make someone to make a motion with these, plus the further items that I think we all put forward. There's probably not an easy way to articulate that. If I could try, but you may want to for the motion or someone else, because I think it's early enough in the process for you to do some further considerations of what we're describing, especially around Cedar and the ground plane, and potentially even the building making a nod and a step down as well. So would you like to?
Sure, I'll try. Diane is always really good at this. She's a very good motion maker. However, I would like to move to approve the schematic design of the Cleveland Clinic Research Building with the caveat that they address the schematic design conditions from design review, and also from this board, including but not limited to being more intentional about how you reach back to the community, creating spaces that are engaging for folks who work there and folks who might travel and or live within the community, and really take a look at how this campus that you're trying to create on the south end of your facility or your campus really ties in with maybe a plan, maybe some suggestions of how the streetscape might be activated and how buildings might begin to engage with that streetscape. Thank you.
Okay. A motion to a second?
I second.
Motion to a second. Any further comments? I don't see any hands. Can we call the roll?
Anthony,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Blucher,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott,
Yes.
Shield Clark,
Yes.
Slight.
Yes.
Motion carries. Welcome, Councilman.
Thank you. Sorry.
Very fine. All right, motion carries. Our last design or item
Thank
before
you.
we do administrative approval.
Good luck.
And so if you don't mind, can we just do the administrative approvals in case, from a quorum point of view, it will take 2 seconds. If you can take a second to look, there are 6 items that are on the administrative. There won't be any presentations. I do think the director has one comment about one of them. So you want to go ahead?
Sure. So as we move towards our administrative approval slides, sorry that we're basically going through the background.
Oh. They can scroll. They don't have to flip through it.
Thank you to the chair. You know, one of the administrative approvals I did want to raise is that in conjunction with the the Mayor's Office of Capital Projects, Planning and MOCAP have applied and are competing for the federal IIJA Reconnecting Communities Grant Program. And that program specifically is a program meant to look at how highways have divided communities. And so the geography that we've identified is East 22nd Street, where downtown connects with Central, all the way up north along I-90, going towards MLK. So you're kind of going north towards the lake and then across the lake, St. Clair Superior. And so, Chair wanted me to make mention of it because this is a really important planning opportunity. We applied for a $2 million planning grant. We have identified the local match within our, budget, should we win and compete. So we're really excited because, as we know, highways specifically through the urban renewal process destroyed and really cut up neighborhoods, separated neighborhoods, and we really feel this is an opportunity to reconnect communities to one another and communities to lakefront. And we are working in partnership with ODOT, who is supportive of the effort moving forward. So
That's item number 6, right?
that is item number 6 for
Okay.
administrative approvals.
And item number 5, just so you know, is the, what is that parcel? Did we see that? University?
That was the riverfront parcel.
Okay, oh, yes, yes.
Yes,
Okay.
Tremont.
Okay, we just need a motion for administrative approvals. If someone would.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, I'll call the roll.
Anthony,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott,
Yes.
Sheila Clark,
Yes.
Sly.
Yes.
Motion carries. Just so, the next item is for informational purposes. I'm gonna have the director talk about that. And because there is, it's going to say I. Are you ready? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as you shall answer to the penalty of perjury?
Yes, I do.
Not you
Oh.
don't have to. And how should I act? Because you're already sworn in. You're consistently
Yes.
sworn in for your whole life. Question though, after the director goes, would you like to speak first? Would you like to wait? You have the honor.
I'm happy to speak
Okay,
first.
all right, director, you want to
Sure.
give
All right,
us the
thanks.
prizes?
Thank you. We are really excited. Thank you, Bedrock team, for coming here today with your full bench. We are about to see a vision for a development plan that is likely the largest development plan that we've seen in the city of Cleveland for maybe ever, but in a very long time. And part of the process that's really important to us, our position at the city is that this is a meaningful, transformative project that will forever change the riverfront. It'll change our impression of downtown and Tower City, and it'll change the impression of the city and the region. And so our position and our posture is really like, let's get to yes. And it does fulfill many of our goals for Vision for the Valley, for 18-hour, 15-minute cities, for transit-oriented development. With that being said, part of the process that's important to us is for the commission to be able to see the vision as a whole. And then also to begin the discussion publicly about the city's goals, Bedrock's goals, other public entity goals. So the purpose for today is twofold. The first is to provide an overview of information of the vision plan to the commission so that you can see the full picture. The Bedrock team will be back over and over again because as they phase in their projects, there will be pretty much every agenda item you could even imagine. Lot splits, lot consolidations, zoning changes, design review, legislation. And so by giving this big picture of the vision, you'll be able to understand piece by piece as it comes through what the goal is. The second purpose of today is for the commission members to provide feedback, questions, comments as you move forward towards refining your development plan. The Bedrock team will express their timeline. Eventually, we'll be coming back later this year for an adoption of the private development plan. And so the goal is to get a robust conversation going early so that the commission can share your thoughts and questions and feedback early. I do want to note, these are just preliminary draft city goals for mobility that are for the purposes of discussion. This is not hard and fast. These are, goals that we have thought about. Most of them, I would say most of them have discussed with Bedrock or at least shared with Bedrock. And that's just for your reference, in case you wanted to ask more or prod more. And so with that, I'm going to turn things over to Deb Janik, who is representing Bedrock and the team for your presentation.
Before you guys begin, for those of you guys who don't know me, I'm a really nice guy. And for those who do know me, I am who I am. So anyway, go ahead.
Just say, I do want to welcome back to Cleveland, Ajay Associates, representing Sir David Ajay. I mean, it's an honor to have Sir David and his team here in Cleveland. So I just wanted to recognize them and thank you for being here.
Thanks, Director. And before I ask Councilman McCormick to do some opening remarks, just a point of reference. Where do you want us? Like, can we stand today?
I don't.
You're about to set a precedent.
You should
so,
I don't know, actually. Yeah. Interesting.
Great.
All right, thank you.
It's like a stand. Yeah, we just like a stage.
Yeah,
I know.
Like a box, like in a British
At a
court.
podium.
Right there.
Permission to approach, right?
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Curry McCormick, and Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak today, Director, as well. You had to twist my arm to get out of the 12-hour budget hearings we had been in. So no, but it's good to see you here. I'm really just interested in engaging with the presentation today. A couple key notes. The team from Bedrock has been a great partner in working with myself, my office, and the community, as well as I know the planning department throughout this process. They are also engaging on ways to set up meaningful community dialogue in and around the project too, with neighborhood residents, not only from the downtown neighborhood, but neighborhoods around it as well. A couple of just points I want to note, just kind of big picture things. I think this is a really important opportunity. We know we've got an incredibly talented design team. We know we've got a committed company, which is all great. Our riverfront and our lakefront for years has been literally gated off from the community. It has been gated off from the residents, the citizens of the city of Cleveland. So it's really exciting to see the BIB administration, Director Wong, leading this effort to say, let's open up these spaces to our neighborhoods and to our communities in a very public-facing way. So I'm just really appreciative that through all of these conversations, we are prioritizing the citizens of our community having full public access to these spaces, full public access to the riverfront, full public access to the lakefront, because once again, one of the biggest things we hear is we have this tremendous asset in our river and our lake. How do you get to it? How do residents interact with it? How do they? So again, what's really important to me as we go through this process is that we ensure, which from everything I've seen, they're already way heading in that direction, which is great to see, but is that our public has full access, and that whether it's the lake or the river, that it is welcoming for all. So once again, Madam Chair, really excited to see how we open up our waterfront for our people once and for all. And I've been born and raised in the city of Cleveland, and I finally feel like we are getting there. We're making progress under Mayor Bibb with Dr. Wong and the partners here today to actually do that. So it's really exciting. The last thing I'm going to mention, Madam Chair, this is not going to be a surprise to you, but we have got to prioritize people over cars in this plan. I know that's the direction we're heading in, but if we continue to plan the city around the vehicle, we will learn nothing and we'll be in the same place. So when we think about making infrastructure changes that prioritize public transportation, that prioritize humans, pedestrians, cyclists, users, that is what's going to transform our city to be a people-friendly, attractive place to work, live, visit, not the vehicle. So I know that's the direction we're going. I'm just boldly endorsing that. We got to get a little bit uncomfortable, We gotta get a little bit future forward, and we gotta think differently about how we interact between our city core and our waterfront. And I know that's the direction we're going in, and I just wanna make sure that as we go along, we keep that centered, that this has gotta be a human-friendly, people-level plan, and embraces things like changing traffic patterns, and embraces things like how do we get humans down here. So I'm thrilled to see that that's the direction the plan is going, and I just wanna boldly endorse that. Thank you all, that's all.
Thank you.
So we done? No, I'm kidding. Thank you to the commission, to the director again. I think the director so eloquently teed this up that I'll be brief in my opening remarks. We were pleased to be in front of the design review committee yesterday. As mentioned, I'm joined here today from our incredible consultant team and also with my Bedrock colleagues virtually. We have Ajay Associates, Cindy Wong, and Russell Crater. Russell will be up shortly to run you through the presentation. We also have our master plan support team with MKSK and our prime civil team led by Osborne Engineering here in Cleveland. You know, appreciation to the mayor, his entire leadership team, especially the director and her staff. It's been a wonderful partnership that will continue to grow. We appreciate that it's a partnership that is a give, take, a push, pull, and quite frankly, we're very comfortable to talk through where we have differences of opinions because I think we share a mutual goal and objective for the project. As you are aware, we unveiled the plan in December of 2022. This culminated from over 15 months of due diligence performed by Bedrock in accordance with the master development agreement that we executed with the city in 2021. And it has been inclusive of numerous public partners along the way, including the city and dozens of civic stakeholders as well. I think where we're going is, you know, we know this is a complex project, and a project of this nature requires direction and feedback and input, and it requires it often. So as the director said, with every advancement of the master plan and its framework, for every sequence, for every investment, horizontal and vertical, we will be back. We'll be back in front of design review committee. We will be working through the administrative and legislative processes, and we look forward to being back with you. We are committed to delivering this under the strength of a public-private partnership that is strong and will continue to be strong. And that is what will enable us to deliver this for you. So we look forward to your comments today. We appreciate your time. And with that, we'll head into the presentation. Russ will join us in a second. 3 core objectives: 15-minute neighborhood, leveraging all the investments to keep pushing Cleveland to an 18-hour city. The foundation of this platform of our master plan, as you'll see it today, is built on leveraging sustainable, resilient infrastructure on the basis of public space. We are going to create a site of accessibility that goes from the shore to the core. And it requires some big, bold moves, as Councilman alluded to, but it will also result in public space and accessibility with, we hope you will agree, increased mobility and access for all Clevelanders, all Cleveland residents, all visitors, and everyone who chooses to come to this, what will be the largest transit-oriented development in the state of Ohio. We also want to focus on the third goal, which is most important. How do we ensure equitable delivery of economic growth through this project? How do we deliver equitable opportunities? That goes back to the strength of the public-private partnership as we work through that, not just through a master plan approval process, but as we work through every iteration of this project going forward. Next slide, please. Why we're here today: informational review, overview of the master plan and the bold infrastructure, public improvements, first step towards walking towards approval, and again, our commitment to continuously update and engage. Next slide, please. We have a 15 to 20 year vision in place. We'd love to accelerate it, work to do that. But our ongoing implementation, again, will be coming back with each development sequence from concept to schematic to final approvals and design, taking the feedback and intake, not just of this body and the design review committee, but as the councilman said, as we move out with public engagement in concert with the director and her team and other administrative leadership, both with the public, the residents, and continuing with numerous public stakeholders and civic stakeholders. Next slide. Again, most of our team is here, so I've already introduced them, but we wanted to show you that we have a robust investment with a consulting team, the vast majority of which are here locally based in Cleveland, and we will continue to work with our teams here and future engagements to deliver the project. Next slide. And we launched the project in 2021. And over the course, again, the last 15 months, working on plan development, focused on plan approval, to get to next steps in 2023. We hope to begin implementation as early as the end of this year, but certainly with an eye towards 2024, as being that point in time we can really start to initiate the improvements. Next slide. Quickly over the last 15 months again, after launch, we did engage the AJAY team in April of last year. The Prime Civil team came along that time as well. And we also came in front of this body to launch our Phase Zero initiative. Again, that installation of the streetscape amenity improvements, and Helen, appreciate you at the head of that with our team, is now underway. Hopefully you've had a chance to see the planters and the amenities as they've started to sprout in front of Tower City and Ontario. And Madam Chair, I promise you, when they bloom in the spring, Ontario is going to look very different. We're not done, but I hope you'll agree it'll be a good start. Our preliminary infrastructure district plan came to Circle in November. We continue to work on that. We appreciate all the work of Chief Tewan's office, MOCAP, Commissioner Mavick and team. And of course, we got to the unveiling. This is a sample of the stakeholders and partners we've met with, and I will just reinforce when that's done. Next slide. Again, pleased to be here today. Key critical path priorities for 2023. This informational session, public engagement session. At the same time, we're advancing the next iteration of our master development agreement with the administration, working with the Chief of Staff and Chief Epstein. That process will finalize the framework of the master development agreement in Q2 and secure approval for all the components of the master development agreement in Q3. I want to really point out that we will continue outreach, engagement, feedback from the community, understanding that responsibility in the community partnership as to how this project, as Councilman said, affects positive change and impact throughout, yes, the CBD, yes, the vision of the valley, but also the broader city on the whole, and hopefully with strong impact in the future. Next slide. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Russell Crater, who's spearheaded this for AJAY Associates, and Sir David. Back for questions at the end. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Doug. Good morning. Thanks for having us here today. We're going to start out with go out and go in a little bit on our process, and just to highlight on this slide, the master plan that we're looking at is a mix of new construction. It's part of new construction, which is highlighted in the purple. It's adaptive reuse, which is just slightly out of bounds on the north into Huron Road. And then it's about rehabilitation, such as the bulkhead. So just using this as kind of a scoping diagram of where we are. Next slide, please. As Deb mentioned, next slide, please. As Deb mentioned, we were brought on in April of last year. There is a host of work that has been done for us. We recognize that we use that time to start thinking and really understand what had been done in that thought process. Slowly things are. Next slide. With that, we understood that it was a legacy, and with that comes many issues about what is the evolution of a legacy. How has Cleveland thrived with the Cuyahoga River? You can see here, these are some images of this color, just beautiful, and kind of went into transportation. But you all know this about the history of your river. This is driving it home for us. In the next slide, in the mid-20th century, we got to this point of maybe overuse, and really not thinking about how land is used, not thinking how the waterways can be used for the public good. From that point to today, the vision that you all have and how that's changing. And we use this as kind of a visioning slide for ourselves. reminding ourselves that if you've made it this far, we're going to keep going and pushing them forward. Next. So this is from the 1940s, I believe. This is the image we used as well, talking about the infrastructure and why this site has maybe had difficulty being developed. You can see, like many on the water, we have that industrial water, right? Easy access to the boats moving in and out of the area, with an easy access to the train lines, which is just on the other side of the canal road. I think what's really telling about this, though, is that off of Huron Road, you see that ramp, that square that's coming down. And that's really getting into the heart of what you're seeing in these elevation marks. So 100 feet, 85, 50, 37 is the section, the topography change that's occurring on this site. And with that, I think that's one of the biggest obstacles is how to navigate getting from city core, which is highlighted in green at Public Square, down to the shore as dimension. Next slide. So this is an illustrative section of the current situation. You can see the federal shipping channel on the far right over here. The bulkhead, surface parking lots down. Next slide. The surface parking lots down at 7. Then we move up to more surface parking at level 50. And then the bridge, basically the Huron Road as a bridge, as the Tower City development occurred over time. It was basically parking decks, Huron Road connecting between Ontario and Superior. And then the RTA that slips under all of this. And so this is kind of a cover for a large infrastructure that is kind of telling a story of what's to come. Next. So as we started this again, these questions of, I'm sure you've all read, maybe participated in design of 18-hour, 15-minute stays. And what was really kind of telling for us is that to take that lens where we had the map, the scope of what our sort of jurisdiction might be, and actually back out of that a bit further and start to really think about what the assets of Cleveland are and thinking about a place that you want to live and work. And the idea of having basically mobility and access for all, but really focused on being there versus getting it. I think it's just one of these tags that is something that's been key and very prominent in what we've been dealing with public consultants. Is really, what does it mean to get there and be there? And working with different means and multimodal transportation, and then really kind of trying to create those spaces. And it's more about spaces than say per se the buildings, right? Next. And so pulling out of the pandemic and pulling out of what we've researched and understanding where urban design has been, where it's going, really understood that the national park management or natural resources were key during the pandemic when everyone was trying to find, where do I go find peace out of stresses? And started to see that thrive. And it goes without saying, I think we all appreciate more parks. And then entertainment venues. Whether it was COVID or not, I think we all know the idea of social interaction, what it means to be around others. And then the idea of recreation and existing homes. And those are all things I think we see on the broad lens and understand really well. But it's really what happens behind the scenes that really will make this successful. And that's developing these keys such as public transportation, truck deliveries, access, mitigating the site topography of 100 feet, and then of course reestablishing that urban bulkhead to make that civic space. So we start here, pushing off the vision for the valley, and really thinking about the idea of master plans, city designs, and really starting to focus more on the idea of natural resources, more so than the idea of existing in multiple components. So we've been working on the right balance between open space, developable space, and then thinking about how dividing up the site. So we start out with kind of a strong framework here. We're right at the water's edge, with about 12 acres of civic space right on the water. Next slide. And then we think about that connection. That's the big public space, and then we know that the public square up on the hill is our other public space. after we start to think about that connection, and that's where we start to leverage Terminal Tower and Tower City, knowing that the RTAs, there's we have a great public transportation network already in place. So we start to think about that spine that's going here, basically really thinking about the arcades of Cleveland and how that can manifest itself more into some of the history here of moving from Terminal Tower, Tower City, and down to the shore. But we've highlighted that moment of Huron Road, right, which at present serves as kind of a dam, if you will. It's that diving board off to the section. It's the 40-foot drop, and it's a highway. It's has some heavy commercial traffic, speed limits rather fast. So we've identified that as something we want to dive into as a nucleus for how will unlock potential for the rest of the development. We've identified that also as maybe the move that Huron no longer becomes a castle wall or a border wall. We've started to look about how we make that transition back into the city with some development. Next slide. Next. So using some of those approaches and thinking about the transition, you can see we start with the public square down to what we call the porch, and using Tower City as the gateway. So we create this spinal axis, which then goes east and west for development. Over on the east, you can see some of this language we have, like the courtyard, the porch, and canopy. These are working names. These are not nowhere near defined, but just to give us some language. So to articulate this, we have the courtyard, the porch, and canopy as outdoor spaces that we see as this transition is moving to and from the city, bringing the neighborhoods together. And basically, again, along that water's edge, green space. And then I think in red you're seeing, and I'm not sure you can see from where you're standing, but that's a rework of the Eagle ramp, bring that down. So that would unlock the potential of getting in and out of this neighborhood, as well as connections to flats and up to the vehicles. Next. So a little 3D massing, giving you a sense of some of the program and how we're seeing this. Again, this is, if you remember my slide with the entertainment and recreation at the top, the infrastructure on the bottom, we're not seeing that infrastructure yet. And so this is the vision. I want to just highlight, we're looking at 3.5 million square feet of new development with 12 acres of that community, hopefully public access, open access, using Huron, using the water and community, and then mixing in 2,000 units of residential with another 1.4 million of community resources identified at the moment. Ideas of churches, libraries, maker spaces, education centers, and then of course retail. Next slide. So to get to this point, and we're going to talk a little bit about infrastructure, but we believe that this is a proposal for how we can move forward. And some of this has already been started. We've already been in conversation with the RTA, NOACA, city. There's a host of, say, 50 other people working on this that are not in the room today that are continually evolving this moving forward. But you can see here, these are some of our next steps, both not already in the queue, and that's the traffic impact statement assessment. It's looking at the multimodal mobility and access and really starting to identify what is occurring right now. We know that Sherwin-Williams building is coming online, and that there's traffic there, and thinking about that in the future. We know there are other developments occurring and how those might impact us. And then reestablishing or rehabilitating the riverfront bulkhead. That probably is first to think about. The new Eagle ramp, as I said, to unlock vehicle access in and out of this pool. Canal Road, where does it really sit for the idea of civic engagement on the water and then develop a line behind that? Huron Grid, which I identified in this slide, you see that as a block a little bit. And then repurposing of Prospect Act. All of this development is part of that infrastructure to support the big idea. The imaging next. I realize this image is small, it's the scale for you all, but you can start to see the big moves at a diagram level. Starting at the right for you all, that's Eagle Ramp in blue down, unlocking that potential for Canal Road, realignment of Canal Road, using that space against the water and call it open space. And then that developable parcel that you're seeing. Go to the next slide. You can see these pieces of infrastructure starting to be right. And also just start with the water. The water access labeled C here is re-looking at that bulkhead. The existing bulkhead in many cases will stay and we'll move the water, new water edge back. All while keeping that federal shipping channel alive. The dashed blue line is the federal shipping channel. Actually, sorry, it's the gray line just south of the blue line is the bulkhead. And you can see as part of our design, and I know these are all illustrated diagrams, many layers to them, but you can see that what we're working on is examining that water's edge and really thinking about, are you on a bulkhead? Are you pulled off and seen an estuary? Is it natural topography? Is it a hard edge? You can see that in some of our concept renderings from the moment, but we're really thinking about that water's edge and how we rehabilitate. Then we move to roads, right? So we've got Canal Road and Eagle Ramp. Two big moves, I think, that start to set up and define working with the topography of how to get in and out of this. I think, I'm sure you all know this, but just to highlight, the Parker Bridge is probably our lowest vehicular access out of the site, and then it goes up to Superior and on Superior, and then there's Hope Bridge. So it's a really complex kind of bowl that we're working with how to get in and out of. And then, of course, Prospect being on the top. And then with that, two other really important moves is in discussions with the RTA that you're seeing highlighted in pink. And that's looking at transfer stations, surface transfer stations for the buses. Using those, rethinking, re-leveraging building assets where we can to make connections through buildings, some on surface, basically to Prospect Ave, and then dropping down into the RTA. So we're really working on public transit, how we can make those connections. And then of course, looking at cutting off Huron Road to make that into a Huron Prospect. And then layering that on with more, whether that's lawns or vegetation and ground cover or planters that all part of our development moving forward. We're really starting to think about the scale of those pieces. Next. So a little 3D diagram just to understand a little bit of the topography. This time I'll start with the red zones, 4 and 5. So 5 is located in the pit next to Sherwin-Williams building, you all might know. Like the whole, it seems like a holdout space, really kind of making dual plan. And then 4 is up on Superior. And these would be surface grade bus trailers. And the idea of going through the Sherwin-Williams building to a connection on 72, level 72 of Tower City, with connections vertically up to Prospect Avenue, new connections labeled 2 and slow. So you start to see that east-west axis starting to line out with transit. And then we start to understand again the center and the public squares labeled 1, and think about that access down to the water. Or highlight the 10-foot data of Portal. And so really thinking about that cross axis and thinking about how we move from sustaining, sort of rehabilitating Tower City to accommodate this, then lends us out to item number 3, which is the Knuckle project, which makes that leap, that transition from new development to the city. And that's where we're really seeing this positive activation of making that knuckle move. And then going back to our early vision, you can see the courtyard Esplanade coming down, top left, and then on further down to the right, you can mention the sports centers to the right, again, that public access, which you can come down to the left. And then Canal Road, just gonna hit on these, we've got a few colors there about multimodal. We'll see this in some of the concept images about how we're starting to think about bikes, cars, and people all interacting. All of this to say is that with the master plan, you're going to see a series of buildings. There are representational ideas of change. But the overarching theme that we might put on all of these is an idea of low carbon, low impact. Start with looking at construction techniques and looking at timber is having a really strong presence right now, but what other materials are there that have low waste and low footprint issues with the environment? Looking at ecology, how can we take the water's edge and use that both for education and new development, recreation and transportation? Looking at how can we use water management oversight? You have 12 acres of open space. What can we do there to help with flow of water? And then lastly, really understand that we have this prime opportunity to have southern exposed building faces and on the hillside. So how can we use that to help with, say, the winter winds, So this is a new proposed section, basically cut through just to the east of the courthouse. That's the state, and in the dark figure, that's the state office building. And you can see the Esplanade is down. And then that wide strip of land that we put in between Alberta. And that's where we're really focusing on some of the waterfront activity. We call it sometimes an urban forest. You'll see some other types of activation. We're really thinking about this drive, mini current and current right out of the city, landing on the water. And then you can see some of the massive and scale buildings that we're working on as it goes down Canal Road. Talking a little bit more about that Huron Plaza approach I'm talking about, you can see the two black lines. That is the edge of Tower City. See that? That is the edge. And what we're really kind of considering here is how can you take Huron Road, work it around in Prospect Union, and then using this layer, this base level, this is elevation 72, which is the base level of Tower City, coming up out of the RTA, and then the buses come in on 72. And really think about how you can move people all along this plane past Huron Road and then access to the water. And so that's where this plaza starts to take place. I'll show you an image in a moment, hopefully to give you a better understanding, but really trying to use this as a means to make that bridge between the downtown. So I'm just going to show a few conceptual images for atmosphere, scale, and approach. There's the courthouse. We're looking up back into the city. The courthouse with the overarching the angled roof. This is that urban forest exchange about the idea of having depth there a little bit more than others. This is huge. Pocket Park. So there's all sorts of levels of scale and space we're trying to identify. These are pocket parks, and these are kind of the ones of the residences that will be supporting the infrastructure around here. So this is, you can see the scale of this change, the bulk of this difference. That's Canal Road, just in the background from the water. That waterfront activity, right now we included a splash pad. This summer, you can imagine this winter that turning into ice rink. That's one idea of exploration that we have. You can also then start to see that on the right hand side is the water's edge, in which we're going with the natural edge condition, allowing the landscape to fall into the water. Hudson Plaza. This is basically Huron Plaza.
Thanks for coming.
Hudson Yards? Is that what you meant? Hudson Yards? That is not what you meant.
That's no hype.
Hudson Yards.
Okay,
Hudson
okay.
Yards.
Just trying to clean it up.
I thought you were making it an hour.
That's no, that's
If there's press on here, yes, any press?
Yeah. Hero Plaza. Alright, so this is that moment. So that line of glass we're seeing on the left is the edge of Tower Cities. So basically using that moment moving forward to bring bring the public and public transit, using that as a mode of transportation, thinking about how many people are going to have access to that to come in and out of this neighborhood, using that zone as kind of a lot number of the same. Again, this is just a different kind of feeling that we're going to have. We're working on different scenarios, different types of experience for town. So here, just outside of the porch, you can see timber as a orientate yourself in the trees. We're really starting to use this as a smaller scale, more unique area. You can see where Canal Road is in the back, we're looking at different paving materials. Different paving materials. So you can see how we're trying to work on that edge condition and really start to think about safety and security, about keeping the road active, starting to think about materials or chicaning or devices that can slow down the car and keep pedestrians safe, trying to privilege pedestrians, bikes, on this path. And then just another kind of feeling that we have along the water. This is where basically we're a balcony over the water, about 14 feet above the water's edge here. We're climbing with pocket vehicles to work on. We are looking towards the lake in this image. And then again, changing that, basically the plan is getting smaller, so we're starting to work with topography, thinking about benches and seating, and then vertical vegetation. Looking, we're at Collision Bend, looking all the way back towards the lake. General Tower slipping in between the buildings, the courthouse, and then just kind of an idea of the massive, so stepping low at the water's edge, more high as we move closer to the city, and then really thinking about those interstitial spaces, breaking down the scale of the urban buildings and what we have today scale, and we're really thinking about it.
Is that a beach? I'm sorry, not as here. It looks like a beach, a river beach.
Here we are at Collision Bend. Basically, in every one of these moments, what we're working on is not really illustrated here. In all of these moments, we're using the building as infrastructure for public space and thinking about comfort stations and accessibility needs. Using each one of these platforms tied to a building that has a section. So we're going to have programming in each of the buildings and have access basically into the exterior and into the interior. We're at that mix of trying to make sure that we can make buildings support the big idea that not design buildings. It's a fun conundrum, especially for those that like design. But really what you're getting here is a sense that I really want to push is that we've come down the hill for maybe a sports event, or we're just taking an afternoon and we're going to watch from exposure, try to turn on Collision Bend. But a real moment of rustic freedom. Far west again, looking at kayak inland recreation. Also thinking quite a bit about lighting, knowing that we want to be cognizant of fish and wildlife, so trying to keep light out of the water and bring about light pollution. And then though, using light when we can to highlight program spaces and give them identity and work. The winter shock, understanding that we definitely we're continuing to search for program and ideas for how we can engage more in the winter seasons. it's at the top of our minds. We've many visits here next winter. We're really starting to think about how we can activate this season. We do have a selection of renters with nice summer, spring days, but we are considering and trying to get into more about what kind of activities can we do outdoor to draw people to have an amenity outside of your home to go to that establishes that reinforces that. And then I just want to take this moment to again find the buildings we're seeing are ideas of massing. They're a place to help support this idea of infrastructure, not only for city infrastructure, sewers, transportation, but also pieces of infrastructure to help support accessibility in and out of dealing with topography. And then what we're really hoping for is, as this project moves forward, that the buildings take on sort of their identity. And it's not a homogeneous kind of stand like this.
Let's go to the end. If you don't mind.
Yeah.
So we talked, obviously, thank you, Russell. Thank you guys for your time and attention. We are, we can just go to Q&A. We appreciate it. It is a huge undertaking. As we move forward again with this project, as the director mentioned, likely the largest I've ever worked on in 35 years of doing this here in this community. But I think it positions us for the next 135 years as a community as we work together. It cannot happen without public-private partnership and the receptivity and embracement and willingness of the administration, council, and councilman being here. We are truly rowing in the same direction. We've got a lot of work to do. So I said we'll be back often, but you're pressed for time and you wanted to get in comments, feedback, questions, and anything you can do is having the next few minutes to engage with the commission and full sentence students. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Schleich has some questions.
Yeah, I have a couple. I hope they're questions, but if they're comments, I'll raise my voice at the end and make it sound like a question. So one, we're in budget here. It's been a rough week. The one, we talk a lot about how, especially with the river, of trying to balance like recreation and industry, and a lot of that conversation I think can be broadened out into getting us to accessing the river, not necessarily in it, but also industrial traffic. I just kind of want to point out there are plans, and Councilman McCormick knows more about this than me, but efforts to further north up the river, really near the mouth of the river, where there's a lot of industrial activity and trucks currently cutting through public housing to get out of the flats. Their logical route to the highway right now is to come over the Detroit Superior Bridge and then go 80 miles an hour down Huron, which is not ideal, but I think it underscores the need for us to take seriously a new connector for those trucks to continue west past the Garrett Morgan water plant to the Shoreway, so that, if this is to happen, but that were to not happen, we would end up with pulling industrial concrete trucks either through Ohio City or down Prospect, and neither is an ideal scenario because we should really be separating those vehicles from pedestrians. So I put that out there just to say that I see that as being linked to this, and I want us to kind of advocate for them in tandem. So that was definitely a comment. The question, one of the statements that you had noted was connectivity to the national park. So, but I didn't see any explicit call out for the scenic railroad. I have kind of a thought and a suggestion and a request, but I'd like to hear more first about how that has been thought of, where it could key into the plan.
Sure. Thank you, Councilman. So, the scenic railroad, along with the national park, huge assets, right? And I know that for the last 20, 25 years, we've talked about, again, when you think about a plan of mobility and access, we look at mobility and access holistically, and I don't think we've ever been positioned as a city and county with the leadership to embrace that. As it relates to the site, we know that NOACA is undertaking a feasibility analysis. We, like our fellow project property owners along the riverfront, look forward to seeing the results of that, and how do we start to think about that feasibility analysis and viability connecting into broader traffic mobility assessments. I know there's been questions asked, the director and I have talked about it, and you know, as we can ascertain as a community, how do we move, how does it make sense, where does it fit in for the connected to Tower City? We're happy to be at the table to further those comments, and it should really be an and, not an or. You know, we make the investment, we get that churn of excitement, that 18-hour city. So how do we make this and into the master plan as we laid it out, into Tower City as the hub, and see if we're able collectively as a community to think about making that connection over the course of the next, what will likely be, honestly, just from our experience, not just several years, but potentially, you know, decades to make that connection and traverse that 9-10 miles from where we are now.
Gotcha. So this is kind of there's no bad ideas in brainstorming, right? So let's just throw them all out there. Getting the rail up out of Valley View, I don't know the status of the bridge further down towards the mills that you would have to cross to actually get onto this side of the river. But then there's obviously a pinch point once you start to get under the Lorraine Carnegie Bridge. I guess my question in part of the traffic study is, to what degree do we really need Canal Road? It's a great shortcut if you know about it, but for that gap from kind of the bridge up to really the entrance to the Tower City parking deck, there's very few, if no, businesses fronting it. So I guess if space is limited, is Canal Road the pathway for a rail line? And then I guess my other thought is, I know we've talked about connectivity of the scenic railroad into Terminal Tower. I would almost prefer, and this is just me, I think we forget about the old B&O station at Canal and like right next to the Carter Road Bridge. That was the train station before Terminal Tower was built. It's actually a really historic, beautiful building that kind of you miss because everything, you're in a tight corner and it's boarded up and you're up high, but it's historically significant. It is beautiful, and it'd be really cool for that to be a connectivity. Maybe that's the train station, and it's right across from Canal Basin Park, so it has kind of a seamless segue with the towpath. You know, and then I'll end the comment by saying I was in Memphis last year, and their historic but still active train station is now a hotel. So I was like sitting there drinking like an old fashioned or something, and thinking about like the history of Memphis, and especially migration out of the Mississippi Delta, and all the people that came down these stairs into Memphis, and then how like the amount of history that kind of just walked through that building. And I feel like there's a comparable story about that B&O terminal and its history in Cleveland. And I'd love for us to think through how that building can be part of this project in any form. And I want to see it stay. Having it be part of the National Park Railroad, I think, would be even cooler. But that's sort of a suggestion when budgets aren't under consideration. So yeah. So
I'm going to make a quick comment because I have to leave, and then member Denise McRae-Scott is going to go next. But I'll make a quick comment just because I have to get to the City Club, and August will take over. Mine is just a very quick comment. First of all, thank you. And this is a big vision, lots of transformation. But I'm struck by when something is this big and this large and has to get done over a large period of time, that it really does have to be a true public-private partnership. And I do know that's what's going on. So it's just a comment like that. The only way to do something that includes this much infrastructure and this much transformation, it's a long-term public-private partnership. So my suggestion is, between all the things that are going to come out that we might want to see before you come back for approval, there'll be a list. But I think for me, what might be required at that point, whether it be a traffic study or any transit stuff with RTA, is for you to come back when those partners would come with you and sit here and talk about how you might not have figured everything out, but that this is how you're going to work together to go forward. And I know that's not here today. It's just a sense of like, it would be really hard for us to approve anything of this scale without those folks sitting in the room here. So we could have a conversation both with you and them. So that's first. And then the last thing is that just an overarching thing of also my history and kind of infrastructure projects, devil's in the details, right? Big visions like this fall apart when you get down to actually Detroit Superior Bridge is my example, right? So I know you guys know this, it's nothing you don't know, but the distance between this kind of catalytic vision and then when you get down there, and that's why I also think having those folks in the room, like traffic folks and folks who are going to say what you said. We get it, we got to think differently, we're going to prioritize differently, we're going to, so you guys are the ones fighting for it. So I'm not telling you something you don't know. I'm just saying the hard work starts now. That is the hard work, right? And so, but that's where this will granularly be transformative, not just big vision transformation.
So to piggyback on what Madam Chair said, when we're talking about traffic studies, you mentioned you're gonna repurpose Prospect Avenue. What is that? What does that look like?
Yeah, I'll ask Crystal to jump in as well. So I have my office overlooks Prospect Avenue. And like many streets completed today, as we think about the breadth of the new built, I look at 6 lanes that maybe have, and I'm in my office lot, full time back in, so we'll come back.
We appreciate it, yeah.
And I do. It's just underutilized. And so when you think about leveraging that east-west connection, in accordance with the congruent to the potential of a Huron bold move, we have to figure out how to maximize that treatment. And as we're looking at it again with critical leadership provided by NOACA, Commissioner Mavick, MEPs from MOCAP and others, and the RTA, how do we leverage that massive amount of space in a way that can move traffic efficiently, effectively, and increase mobility? And as we move through the traffic impact assessment that's underway, and when we come back with our partners, we'll be able to articulate how vehicle, bike, bus, and scooters and pedestrians can all intertwine there. But right now, it really is an east-west connector that is vastly underutilized. And so if we incorporate that incorrectly, we think about it broader to the whole CDP, we've got a chance to really move this forward and leverage assets already in place to make this plot move. That's what we come back to with recommendations and ideas.
I've got some questions, but I'll wait.
Okay.
Until then.
I believe, Marika, you're up.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for this presentation. This is really exciting to see. I think it's going to be a huge improvement. I ride my bike over the Detroit Superior Bridge and down Huron a lot, or somewhat, and it's a scary street right now. So I definitely appreciate all that's been said on it. I guess a couple of just questions or maybe more requests for future presentations is I just would love to be able to see a bit more what the actual sort of streetscape plan will feel like on the redone Huron as it kind of goes into that plaza. I just feel like I'm trying to understand like what the existing streets will feel like. I love the renderings from the lake or the river are great, but some of the axons where it's kind of showing this somewhat monotonous drumbeat of buildings down Huron with sort of like plazas in the middle, sort of this like tower in a park looking plan. I just would like to understand how Huron itself can still feel like a more activated space that would be inviting to pedestrians. I think we all agree right now that it isn't necessarily. And then my other just kind of request is, knowing what a long-term plan this is, I would love to understand a bit more about how phasing is going to be considered and, what will this site feel like over the next 10 years as we, as all of the residents of Cleveland kind of live with this project, and that will obviously be a very long-term project. So just would love to understand, 3 years in, what is it going to feel like, to go see the Cavs and, go across the bridge and that kind of thing. So thank you again.
Thank you, Marika. I believe Erica, Commission Member Erica has a comment or question.
Yeah, just a few. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Sounded
sorry,
like
was
Marika
there-
had a question. So
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you done, Marika?
were those
Yeah, I
comments
was
or
done.
questions?
There
I
was
don't know if they
questions, I don't
were,
know.
yeah, I get,
Also.
there was sort of, well, I don't know. I'm more just, I'm imagining these are just things that could maybe be better illustrated in future
don't know.
presentations.
I think that's for later discussion, I believe. I was watching their faces, so I responded to body language. Okay, sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. And I think my comments and questions are the same, just for future consideration. First is appreciation. This is really catalytic, as everyone has said. Opportunity for our city. I'm sitting here thinking about someone that's being born this year and what the city will look like for them as they enter their young adulthood. And that's just like a really exciting prospect to think about. So my comments are somewhat grouped together, and again, for consideration to be articulated in future presentations. I just want to encourage us, and when I say us, both the Planning Commission, Planning Department, and all parties present, that when we use certain terminology like public-private partnership, that we really push ourselves to be accountable to like what that actually means in practice. We know that historically, there have been historical practices that have othered certain segments of our community. And as a majority Black city, we want to think about how do we retain the historical culture of the city of Cleveland, but also build for the future. So just not to use terms, but really to be vigilant and diligent in how we are elevating the practice of what those terms mean. One specific example is under the objectives, where you all talked about equitable delivery of economic growth and equitable opportunities. Like I would like to better understand what are some of the practices that are being incorporated to hold yourselves accountable to delivering on those particular objectives. My next set of comments is really about the community engagement, the civic engagement. I know Director Wong had shared the planning department suggestions and seeking for them to be a part of that. And again, because this is such a long-term plan, institutions may change, people may change, over the course of 20 years. So just being diligent about how to have continuity, I guess, in the sense of, how community will be engaged. And then another consideration is, is it possible to have some sort of public platform where the progress can be viewed? So as Commissioner Marika was just noting, for 20 years, there's going to be a lot of phases and changes, but it would be great for the public to be able to understand what's happening at a particular phase. And I'm not sure if a public platform would be accessible or made available so people could access that and maybe even think about incorporating some digital simulations so people have a really good sense and understanding of where you are in what particular phase and what they can expect to see during that particular phase. Thank you.
Thank you, Commission Member. Did you want to address a question or two, or?
Okay. I think to a previous comment about what will we see next, and you're imagining what Huron Road will be, prospects. Going back to your question about prospect, I just want to say, like, what we presented today was hopefully the framework for which we hope to move forward. And as we move forward, we will respectfully ask for more time and probably a mixed deck. Just to have these, there's a whole host of information we didn't use, but we wanted to give you the framework for what we're thinking on all of these, on all the street views, and all of the gestures that we have on paper. We're all cognizant, that one slide on sustainability footprint. We're looking at that not just from a lens of building systems, our analysis, we're looking at that one, what that means for Citizens Place. Why do we want to make this change on here on, right? This just this little decision, if the rest of it is listened, right? If we don't do that right, no one's gonna want to come there. So you're right, you haven't seen illustrations of that. You are going to see illustrations of that. We're gonna be back. I'm not gonna mess up on I mess up on that's an all time. But we're gonna be back and we're gonna be diving into these with more vignettes and we'll give you that understanding. But the big picture today was this is our framework. And while we have those pretty pictures, I think the really key thing that I want to push is that it's we have to develop this infrastructure to make it supported. Right? And that's sort of big overshare goal today. Is our framework on what we're trying to do. But also like, hey, give us a lens to like we're happy for these comments. Just want to make sure you know that we're digging.
Okay. There's never been a meeting where I don't give social commentary. So first of all, I love stories and you guys have done a wonderful job of storytelling and telling us, what things are and how they connects and intentionality of improving your infrastructure. My biggest concern, and it's an observation and a criticism, I suppose, is let me digress. Great work at putting together such a diverse team. I mean, and that's awesome. But I think some of the institutions and some of the stakeholders aren't as diverse in thinking. And so when we start really unpacking all this, I hope that you bring diverse voices to the table. Whether it's a Third Space Action Lab or, Hispanic Business Center, because what's important is when I mention Third Space, and I'm not the organization, but Third Space for people of color. You have work, home, but there's never a space for us. And we have to really be really intentional about how we design all this so that everyone's welcome, or they feel welcome, or they don't have to come, bring $100 to enjoy themselves. So that's really what I'm talking about is diverse thought, and that informs what this ultimately is going to become. So I commend you guys for such a the magnitude of this undertaking, which is phenomenal. But as Lillian said, the devil is in the details. Director Wong, do you have?
Yeah, if there's nothing else from the commission members, I'd like to just talk about.
I'll just add to that I think this is riverfront, but lakefront also. I think one of just how Cleveland is spatially set up, like our downtown is separated from where a lot of Cleveland people live. It's just there's kind of this pinch point, everything kind of comes up to downtown. So I think part of what August is getting at, and not to put words in your mouth, but how do we create a space where people come, but how do we make sure that they're gonna come? Because unlike other cities, it's a little bit of a trek. It's most Clevelanders probably don't come downtown every day. Probably don't come downtown every month, so how do we go that extra mile to make sure that people who don't live downtown, no matter what neighborhood they live in, especially communities that feel that places aren't for them, that we're really going out of our way to make sure that this is designed to kind of bring Cleveland together to downtown, because downtown's a neighborhood, but it's also our shared space. So how do we? It's a challenge just because unlike another city, we don't have neighborhoods all on all sides of us. So,
but I'm glad you brought that up. I wasn't going to bring it up, but I'll bring it up. Please, Director, on one more minute. There are other efforts going on in the city, like the city's open space analysis. That needs to tie it back because, as much as the group plan was wonderful back then, it means a different thing to the city. And you can't just create a space and think people will come. It needs to be a great passive space. Obviously, it needs to be programmed, but it also needs to be coordinated with everything else and all the other activities that's going on in our city and around downtown. So, Dr. Wong?
Yes, thank you. I just want to thank you again for the discussion. It sounds like there's quite a bit of feedback, both from today as well as yesterday, from the design review. I'm happy to comment on that if needed, but I think moving forward, we're looking forward to working closely. I think getting some more detail on some of those aspects is going to be important as we work towards our public-private partnership. And, I think one thing that the planning department, as we see all the changes that are happening in downtown, one thing we can handle and take care of is, first of all, like, this is not the only project that is going to be addressing traffic changes. We know that the Lakefront project, the North Coast Connector, is also going to have impacts to traffic. There are other, projects here and there that do, and so our goal is to really take a look at that holistically to make sure that the arteries and the veins of our downtown have the proper circulation, and so that we're not squeezing some veins so much that there isn't circulation passing through, if I could use that analogy. I think the other thing is like how do all these projects connect together? So Bedrock referenced Public Square, and so how do we look at not just the connection to the Public Square, but the areas flanking downtown as well as coming from the north. And so I think the planning department will take it under our wings to sort of help with that coordination and the planning and making sure that all of that is moving slowly, processing forward in a way, processing it forward in a way that works. And so I think that the other thing I want to add, just for the sake of the commission's information, is that the city has established a leadership team. The chief finance officer, the chief of integrated development, and chief operations officer, along with me and Director DeRosa from the capital projects, that we are meeting to talk, because this is not, a simple parcel that is being developed, but it includes the horizontal, right? So it's infrastructure, it's the vertical, which includes development, and it also is this, very large public-private partnership. And so we are meeting regularly to be on the same page about our messaging and our thoughts, especially as this moves into more detail and moving towards the master development. So, so that's just for your information as we're moving forward in this process. I think our job here is to make sure the design and the vision and the desire for equity is being accomplished. And so we as the administration will take that and run with it. So thank you to the commission members for your diligence and your robust conversation. I'm going to just put an open invitation out there. If there are further comments from the commission members, please feel free to send it to me as a director, and I'll make sure to compile them and continue that in the discussion with the Bedrock team. We anticipate the Bedrock team is coming back later this spring for an adoption of the framework. And so any other detail or anything you need, right, to see, that is going to be important that you communicate with me and the planning department. I think the last thing I'll say is that because now this is a part of the public conversation, we have established a public comment rule. Folks are welcome to send comments to the city planning email address, to call in a comment. And so we'll also be compiling that as we go, and we'll be compiling them and sending them to Bedrock for your consideration, and also for the commission's consideration.
I had a thought. If there's any more comments from anyone? I had a thought, and this is just a thought in terms of how you implement this. And I know right now we're at the framework conceptual conversation, but I think on the public side, it would go a long way if you create consortium, and they're independent, obviously. Each independent entity brings someone to the table, because what I mean by that is you got a day job. Jeff has a day job, and when you take something under like this, you need an independent entity that's working on behalf to actually manage all this. I think we need to consider that as we move forward on a project of this magnitude. Go ahead.
Mr. Vice Chair, we at Bedrock, our community growth and development team is engaged. So we're working through that with our internal team. We've also retained an external consultant group spearheaded by Leslie Camper to help us coordinate on the engagement side, and then also Leslie leading the effort in coordination with the director and the city team as well to make sure we're aligned. to relieve some of that pressure
Okay.
from the balloon, but to also make sure we're being very cognizant of a holistic list of incorporated feedback from resident to business owner to visitor, et cetera. And we're working with directors and a team on structuring those.
Oh, thanks. That's very helpful, Deb. I appreciate it because you know how things work. We've been here long enough to know.
I do.
And by the way, you don't look like you're 35 years old.
Oh, see, that's great. I sure shouldn't.
Whoa, I meant it in a positive sense, Deb. You took it there. But we need some levity, guys.
Yeah.
So I think the very last thing is the director's report. So I can bounce through that really quickly. First of all, we are in the thick of budget hearings, so thank you, council persons, for being here. I presented.
Thank you
this
for
past-
having us.
Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Presented on Tuesday, and I think just some highlights. All 4 boards and commissions under the planning department presented to city council. I presented some of the key goals that you see on the screen. I think 2 of the biggest changes to the budget, which financially, is pretty much staying the same. I'm mostly moving items around, moving numbers around, is that we do want to establish a general planning services contract to assist and add capacity to our staff members. We don't want projects to sit on the shelf. We want plans to sit on the shelf, and we believe a general planning services contract will help us move things into engineering or design. The second thing I want to note is that we are a very people-based department. We don't have a ton of operations. We're very plans, policy, process-oriented. So our people are the most important part of our department. And so I have shifted funds over to more professional development and training, as well as certification. So making sure that we have several staff that receive their AICP certifications, are able to go to conferences, network, and get ideas. On the screen is our punchy and powerful department. So I just want to appreciate the staff. Each of them come in working hard every day with a mission to improve the city. And so we're really grateful for each of them. Just demographically, we are 41% Black, 41% white, 7% Hispanic, Latinx, 7% Middle Eastern, and 4% Asian American, represented by moi. We have a good culture, and so I hope to continue retaining that culture moving forward. Next slide, please. Zoning code updates. This is, unfortunately, I was hoping to have the townhouse code draft ready for review, but we are not prepared yet. I'm actually going to get briefed by staff next week on some of the changes. We want to be really careful with the changes proposed. So with that, when we are ready, after law reviews it, the planning staff will post the final draft on the planning department website for you all to see. And then at the following meeting, staff will present the changes to the planning commission for discussion and approval. So there's this 2-step process moving forward. Similar to my message from last time, we've received robust input to the small changes. We will bring those before you at a later time. We'll probably break up those 9 proposals into separate pieces of legislation to come before you at different times when they're ready. And then we've received a lot of interest in the form-based code. This was a point of discussion during budget hearings as well. So we are still preparing the draft for final review with law. And then we are going to do a public posting similar to the other zoning changes for public comment, as well as a full presentation to the planning commission and council members. So, we will have a pretty robust public process as well in the communities to talk about form-based code. So that is coming down the line Q2. I just wanted to give that as a heads up to you all. With that, I want to appreciate Chair Curry, who is no longer with us, but she spent the day with us and also joined me at the table for City Council budget hearings. So I'm thankful for her investment of time representing this commission at budget hearings. And then I'm just overall thankful for each of you and the robust conversations that you bring to the table each time. So thank you.
Can I just make 2 comments real quick?
I don't know. No, go ahead.
No, I think that thank you for sitting in the committee room all day. Sorry we are quite talkative, but I think that on the whole, council's really enthusiastic about the planning commission and kind of eager to find out ways to kind of leverage the commission, the department, the staff more. It's a learning curve for some members. Not everyone, comes in with this type of professional background, but a lot of enthusiasm. I think the other thing that's worth commending is, and I think back kind of my 10 years, engaged with City Hall, and just to that staff slide, the diversity of departments is always a focus of council members. And, we value diversity first and foremost because we're a diverse community, but also I think that diverse people bring diversity of thought. And I think that this department, just in the 10 years that I've been engaged with it, has really leaned into diversity in a way that's commendable. And I think that it's made the department stronger. So I just wanted to commend the director and all of the staff for that, because if we're planning for the citizens of the city of Cleveland, this is what the city of Cleveland looks like. So
If I could respond, it's very intentional and it takes intentionality. So we are very purposeful in making sure that we're representative of the community, but also just in thinking and skills and that's the push and the intentionality that's required. Making sure our city is planned for everybody.
Yes.
Any more comments or questions?
Let's go back to budget hearings.
So go ahead. Thank you.
All right, see ya.
Well, the meeting's adjourned. Okay.
Thank you. Can I gavel it?
Thank you all. Take care.
All right.
Thank
Take
you
care.
so much.
All right. Turn off the speaker.